What absolute shenanigans did your goofy dad get up to? I am a Bengali, and as all good Bengalis, we went to see tigers in the north of Bengal. Spoiler alert, no tigers. After one pretty disappointing day of missing 2 elephant herds and seeing no wild cats, much less a tiger, we stop at a dried-up riverbed. We're freaking tired, the sun is setting, the peacocks are screaming, the usual where we're from. Suddenly, we hear a growl. Monkeys are going nuts, the telltale signs of a tiger nearby. The guide tells us to rush to our jeeps. We oblige, but just before boarding, I see my dad smirking hard. After an hour of waiting, we see no tigers and we head home. The next morning, while everyone is freaking out over the growl, Dad pulls me aside and says it was a burp. A freaking burp. So I can proudly say that once my dad burped so hard that the jungle thought it was a tiger. One time, my dad waited till my 3 siblings and I had gone to bed on Christmas Eve. Then he shouted, "I don't care who you are, fat man, get that sled off my roof." We were all up and telling Dad not to yell at Santa. My dad was a fireman and picked me up from school in a fire engine once. My dad was also a fireman and we kind of took it for granted. All of the other kids thought it was awesome, but we were just used to it, I suppose. He treated it like a job and we did too. Until we went on family vacation and saw a vehicle overturn ahead of us in a terrible accident. Watching my father spring into action and quickly take control and begin rescuing the family made me look at him in an entirely different way. Afterwards, he got in our car and we continued our vacation. He said, "I think they're going to be alright." And that was that, but we knew Dad was a total badass. One day, my dad answered the door in his underwear at 8 a.m. The salesman was obviously weirded out. After he left, my mum was mortified and asked why he did that. My dad said, "If these people don't want a show, they shouldn't have come for the matinee." One time we went to Universal Studios and my dad took me on the Hulk roller coaster even though he knew it would make him sick. I was afraid of roller coasters at that point and he sacrificed himself because he knew I'd never go on a ride without him. When we got off, his face was completely colorless and his stomach was done working correctly for the rest of the day. But I loved the roller coaster. When I was walking out to the car to leave for college, my dad yelled, "Hey!" from the front door, and I turned around. He takes out this huge box of magnum-sized rubbers and throws them at me as hard as he can. They hit me in the nose and he yells, "Care package," and then ran inside laughing. That's very flattering, Dad, but I don't think I'll have much use for them. There are some questions that I feel have to follow up, like, do you not have much use for them because you're not interested, or female, or because you have a teeny tiny dingaling? And if it's the latter, don't worry, you can just drop them on the ground in front of your crush, along with a $100 note and loudly proclaim that you dropped them to demonstrate value. I didn't see my dad much. He lived 80 miles away and was getting his life together. I tried to see him once a month for a weekend. I'd bring my homework and spend a few days with him. I was sitting at his computer while he was watching TV in the same room, and he turns to me and asks if I want to see something. He retrieves a cardboard box from his closet and sets it on my lap, and I open it. Staring at me in the face is a 15-inch, giant, girthy, purple marital aid. I look up to him with a confused expression, and he laughs out with a Cheshire grin. I'm going to make a lamp out of it. We laugh about it for the rest of the weekend, making dumb jokes. It was fun. But soon I leave for home and I forget about the jokes and the toy. So I return a month later, open the door to his apartment to see all of the walls had a faint purple hue. Looking down, I see this giant glowing purple Johnson suction-cupped to my dad's coffee table. I dropped my bags, slack-jawed as he steps up behind me and claps twice, and the lamps turn off. My dad had made a manhood-shaped lamp and then given it the clap. One time, my older brother and I were helping my dad cut down some trees in the backyard, and the chainsaw kind of stuck and my dad yanked it out a little too hard and hit my brother's leg. We all froze and looked at his jeans, which had 4 or so perfectly spaced holes, but no blood. He had managed to hit my brother's pants, but didn't get in far enough to hit flesh. The next words out of his mouth were pretty obvious. "Don't tell your mother." And we still haven't 20 years later. One time, just before I graduated high school, my dad sat me down to have a serious conversation about socializing in college. It turned into him telling me a bunch of crazy party stories and suggesting that the best way to make friends is to own a blender with a 100-foot extension cord, because his friends would go outside to play basketball or whatever, and he'd bring his blender out with them and make margaritas. We met so many girls because of that blender. People like the guy with the blender. My dad is a super serious and straight-laced man most of the time, and it totally caught me off guard. One time, I asked my dad to rent The Notebook for me from the good old family video up the street, and he rented Nacho Libre because he could only remember it started with an N. One time, my dad literally took candy from a baby. A 2-year-old held up a lollipop, and my dad assumed the kid was giving it to him. After taking it and walking away, he realized that the toddler was probably just wanting to show it to him. At least that's what he told us. Maybe my dad just wanted an excuse to take the candy. One time, my dad took my brother's walkie-talkie and had us and about 10 kids in the neighborhood convinced that we'd picked up a signal from a plane that was crashing towards the earth. We were running up and down the streets for an hour with our eyes on the sky listening as the pilot tried to reach someone for help. Dad's windows were open, so we eventually caught on to the heinous laughter echoing between the houses after every Mayday. So Michigan doesn't allow the good sort of fireworks, but Indiana does. So every June, my dad would drive across the border and pick up a trunkful. One rather inebriated 4th of July, he reached in the back, pulled out what appeared to be an oversized confetti popper, and aimed it at the tree before pulling the trigger. It was not a party popper, it was his emergency flare. It got stuck towards the top of the tree and turned the whole neighborhood orange. The cops in my hometown wouldn't really turn out for reports of the good fireworks unless someone lit a car on fire or something, but they will definitely turn out en masse for an emergency flare. Dad went from drunk to drill sergeant in about 2 seconds. Somehow we managed to shove the entire stock of the good fireworks into the garage and used snow shovels to push the husks of the used ones into the parking lot across the street. When the 3 police cars and the fire and rescue truck showed up, us kids were playing with sparklers and Dad was standing with his hands on his hips, scowling at the tree. Why yes, officer, some punks were across the street lighting off Roman candles and huge fountains. And then they just ran off when one of their tricks got stuck in a tree. He was just about to call when they ran off. Don't they know that Roman candles are dangerous? They could have hit one of the kids. About 5 years ago, my dad accidentally cut 3 of his fingers off in our garage with a saw. My niece was only like 5 months old at the time, so growing up, she's never seen my dad with all of his digits. Anyway, when she was about 2.5, she noticed that one of his hands was different. So, one day she asked him, "Grandpappy, what happened to your fingers?" My dad looked down at his hand, all shocked, and said, "Someone stole them!" Her face had the look of pure horror, and she screamed, "Who stole your fingers?" My dad looked at my mum and said, "Grandmummy stole them." My niece ran up to my mum and started beating on her legs, searching her jean pockets to give her back Grandpappy's fingers. My dad, ladies and gentlemen. One time, my dad was sitting on the couch in our living room. Mum brought out a bag of sugar and asked him to open it. He opened it like it was a bag of Doritos, and I mean, it was everywhere. He was only wearing his shorts, so there was sugar in just about every square inch of his visible hair, as well as all over our carpet and couch. Took him 4 showers in a row to get it all off. This is the only feasible way for the narrator to ever be a sugar daddy to someone. Also, bags of sugar aren't hard to open. They're not even in plastic packaging most of the time. What was going on here? One time, my dad made me drive 3 hours from home to visit a nature preserve. He then began taking pictures of the birds there. Just one problem, the birds were plastic. Turns out the flocks had stopped migrating back to the preserve, so they put up plastic birds for tourists. The funniest part was how long it took him to listen to me telling him they were plastic. When I was 17, my crush arrived to pick me up to go hang out. He didn't come to the front door, he just honked from the driveway. So my dad got a bit mad at him. That's not how you treat a lady. Honking is unacceptable. And he didn't let me go out. He brought up that scenario repeatedly for years as a baseline for how my dates should treat me. He hated that guy. I got married a few years later, and my husband died a few years into our relationship. A few years after he died, I was joking with my dad about the guy honking his horn, and my dad looks at me and says, "Wait, that was the same guy?" Yes, Dad, that was the same guy. He'd never realized that I'd married the honking guy. I didn't know that he didn't know. My kids love that story, it's pretty hilarious. When the new Star Wars movies came out, we were in elementary school. My dad's company had booked the whole theater to see it on opening day, so we got to leave school early to see it. My dad dressed up as Darth Vader, full costume with helmet and lightsaber, and snuck into our classroom and came up behind us saying, "Jimmy, I am your father." At the time, I don't think it was possible to be more embarrassed, but now I think it's pretty hilarious of my dad to do that. Me and a few of my friends used to hold poker night each week, which my dad used to play too. He got particularly drunk one night and was getting on his bicycle to go home. It was icy outside and we spent around 15 minutes trying to persuade him to have a lift from one of my friends. He refused. 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the front door, and there he is with blood dripping down and covering half his face. All he said was, "I fell over." He then came in and fell over again, washed his face, and went to sleep on the couch. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One time, my dad crapped his jeans on the side of the road on the way to my volleyball tournament. We were running late for the tournament, so he threw the pants in the woods, had dress pants in the car. He walked around the tournament all day in a red volleyball sweatshirt and pinstripe dress pants. One time, when I was younger and embarrassed about my body and potential dirty words, my dad made up a song about ding-dongs and ladybits and sung it any opportunity he could just to embarrass me. One time, my dad was on a business trip and he ended up getting upgraded to first class. He ended up talking with this guy seated near him for a majority of the flight. Turned out that guy was Usher. One time, my dad made a remote control car and put me as a toddler on it and drove me around. One time, my dad was riding his bike on a 3-foot-tall brick wall, slipped off, hit his head on it, and got knocked out behind it for an hour or so. My grandma almost called the cops to file him missing. He also tried to see how far he could pee into a urinal, apparently about 10 feet before he got caught by a teacher walking into the bathroom. He also dared his best friend to throw a full milk carton at a teacher. His friend did it. That teacher was also my grandma's best friend at the time. Him and my uncle were throwing snowballs at cars passing on the highway. They hit an undercover detective. They ran back to the house, and while my aunt didn't show, they snuck back in and she had to talk to the detective. He also stole my aunt's VW Beetle and took it for a midnight joyride. They stuck it in a ditch and had a farmer pull it out with a tractor. She just found out last year, nearly 40 years later. He really likes car horns. When we were kids, he held down the horn on a country road until the horn gave out and was just squeaking, trying to make a noise. He recently got a new aerating trailer for his lawnmower, and he was so excited about it that he did 3 of our neighbors' yards for fun. He also got himself a Christmas present a few years back and yelled, "Yes, thank you," when he opened it. That same Christmas, my mum got him a new coffee maker, and he spent the entire night setting it up and making everyone coffee. He bought a motorcycle as a midlife crisis thing. He kept it a secret from my grandma for 3 years. A 50-year-old man hiding things from his mum. My older brother fired an arrow almost straight up in the air. It came back down right on the peak of our shed, sticking straight up and dead center. You could tell my old man was trying not to laugh while scolding us. We were having a bonfire one night and one of my brother's friends put a Mountain Dew can near the fire so it heated up slowly. When it exploded, it sounded like a mortar went off. It sent embers 40 feet into the air and 25 feet around. After regaining our senses, we could see our dad's silhouette sprinting inside the house because he thought we were getting shot at. I've never seen him move that fast. To clarify, he was already in the house, running out. Well, that's better, but nowhere near as funny as the idea of him bailing on his entire family to get to safety. Every man for himself. Best of luck, kiddos. One time, my dad saw me put a rubber band around the sink's small water hose thing that I'd specifically set up for him. But instead of saying anything, he just left it there and watched for the next victim. He laughed so hard when the older man we rented the basement to yelled out, "What the frick?" and returned with his shirt all wet. One time, I was in another room and the phone rang. I heard my dad answer the phone when a telemarketer called and they asked if he wanted his ductwork cleaned. He said, "Yes, I'd love to have my ducts cleaned." Quack, 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 and then just hung up on the guy. My dad told a telemarketer to F off once. The telemarketer called back, listed our address, and threatened to murder the whole family. The police escorted me home from school that day. One time, my dad almost ended me because he thought I was a burglar. I'd snuck downstairs for some reason. I was in the kitchen and heard him coming in, so I hid behind the kitchen counter. Heard my dad opening drawers and things. The next thing I know, he had leaned over the counter and grabbed my head and had a kitchen knife to my throat. A split second later, he realized it was me and dropped me. Then I got yelled at because he had heard me breathing. He thought I was a home intruder and I almost got into a world of pain. He was shaking from the adrenaline. As a dad now myself, I can imagine the state of mind he was in. My dad once put off going to the optometrist for 3 years. When he finally went, it turned out his right eye was in charge of looking at things far away, and his left eye only looked at things close up. Sometime during those 3 years, he became farsighted and his brain compensated. One time, my dad went to my school event in jeans, a jean shirt, and jean jacket, also known as a Canadian tuxedo. When I was a child, around 8 or 9 years old, my parents and I were vacationing in Las Vegas, staying at the MGM Grand. Downstairs in the hotel were shops and restaurants, and I had to use the bathroom. I went into the store, did my business, and then to my childlike horror, I discovered the door was stuck. The door was the type close to the floor, and there wasn't room to crawl out. I yelled for my dad, who was using the urinal, and he walks over, grabs the door, and literally yanks it off its hinges, like it was nothing. Sets the door against the wall, and we just walk out. I'll never forget it. In short, Dad ripped a stall door off the hinges because I was trapped inside. One time, my dad set someone on fire. He was standing with a group of people having a smoke. This girl walked up and asked for a light. My dad said sure. She leant in and he lit the lighter, and her hair went right into the flame, causing her hair to catch on fire. Apparently someone had a little too much hairspray. She was fine and didn't suffer any serious injuries. Dad still tells people the story to this day. One time, my dad ripped a humongous toot and killed all of the power in the neighborhood. Literally, dark. Of course, we later found out that somebody had hit a pole further up the line at that exact moment. It made perfect sense to us as kids. Dad's an electrician and has deadly gas, therefore, dark. Now I use this as an example that correlation is not causation. One time, my dad's pub in Africa was held up by 2 guys with firearms. They ran in, brandishing weapons, and one held his to my dad's head and demanded money. Everyone in the place froze up, scared that they'd somehow wind these guys up and they'd kill someone. My dad turned his head to look at the guy who had the weapon to his head and saw the little orange water nozzle at the end of the gun. So he ripped it out of the guy's hands and beat the crap out of him. The night watchman and security showed up and grabbed the other guy who tried to make a run for it and handed his butt to him as well. In short, my dad's African pub was held up by 2 guys with water pistols, so he and security beat the crap out of the would-be robbers. One time, my dad lodged a huge splinter under his fingernail. He has huge hands, and the splinter entered under his middle finger, and the tip of the splinter was poking out of his knuckle. He fell to the ground and calmly asked for needle-nose pliers. After I handed the pliers to him, he yanked the splinter out and went back to work. Hardcore as F. One time, my dad cut his leg pretty bad, so he tore my mum's shirt off, wrapped his wound, and she drove him to the hospital. He also puts coffee in his oatmeal to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. One time, my dad called the phone at my work and asked me where I was and what I was doing. This is a dark story, but I still want to tell it because it really means something to me. After my mum and dad got married, my dad would often come home very late at night, very drunk. Almost every night, he'd be too drunk to function. My dad never thought twice about his alcoholism until my mother went into labor for the first time, and he was so drunk that she had to call our next-door neighbor to drive her to the hospital. My dad was too drunk to drive his wife to a hospital to give birth to his own son. Since that moment, he's never touched a beer. A little different from some of the other delightful goofs and blokes we've had, but this is a great story about how it's never too late to improve yourself. Good on ya, former boozy dad. One time, my dad took me to my college orientation back in '98. I grew up in an urban setting and wanted to mix it up, so I decided on an undergrad school in a very rural area. Read, not a lot of diversity. My dad's the best and always wants to goof around. We had this Jeep growing up that we called Little Blackie because it was, well, little and black. A running joke was that any time any of us in the family saw a similar-looking Jeep, one of us would yell, "Hey, look, it's Little Blackie. I bet you see where this is going." We're walking around campus and sure enough there was a Jeep parked within sight. My dad starts yelling, "Hey, look! Little Blackie! Little Blackie!" Of course, the only African-American kid on campus was walking right in front of us. My dad was oblivious and just kept right on yelling. The poor kid looked at me in disgust and I was so very mortified, I just wanted to disappear. I ended up becoming really good friends with him later in my freshman year, and after I explained the whole story, he laughed really hard. Thank goodness. I still cringe thinking about it though. When I was younger, I was a pretty high-level swimmer, so my mum would take me to events all over the country, leaving my dad and 10-year-old brother at home. I remember one time we went up north for a few days, just after we'd had our house insulated. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen what they do, but they essentially drill holes in your house and squirt insulation inside. It leaves loads of cream-colored spots all over the walls. Now, I remember just before we left for the event, my mum looked at my dad and said, Make sure you paint the house." To which he replied, "Of course, dear." Fast forward 3 days, we're rolling up the drive at about midnight towards a house that's now been floodlit. Multiple lights are now pointing at the White House with massive pink spots, with my dad and my 10-year-old brother stood on ladders covered in pink paint, looking very happy with themselves. Of course, after that, she was more specific with her instructions. She was not happy at the time, I can tell you. When did an improvement ruin a product? Algorithm-based timelines instead of chronological ones. Cough, Facebook, Instagram. I love seeing posts from 5 days ago at the top of my feed. Facebook mid-video ads. Screw that, personalized ads. It just makes me scroll down my feed. There hasn't been a single video that I hadn't skipped every time an ad comes up. Literally, the second I see that little countdown to an ad pop up, I lose all interest in the video and close it. I hate the new plastic Snapple bottles. Weather.com. It used to provide me with accurate weather forecasts. It is now one giant cesspool of clickbait articles with questionable weather numbers mixed in sporadically. Literally everything about iTunes. Someone once called it a software update utility that also plays music. Someone here has already said Facebook, but I need to make a special mention for Messenger. F you, Messenger. Yes, I know I added a friend because I fricking added them. When a story gets traction, the author generally says, "Oh gosh, this isn't what I want to be remembered for on the internet." For me, this is exactly what I want to be remembered for. F you, Messenger, you piece of crap. Messenger treats us like we're people from commercials. "Hey John, just wanted to let you know I've connected with you on Facebook." Wow, that's great to hear, Simon. Digital cable. Cable used to flip channels instantly. All you had to do was remember a 2-digit number for each channel. Now it takes 30 seconds to load up every channel. That stupid live camera option on Facebook when you swipe left. As someone with mild motor tics, especially with my hands, I'm constantly opening the fricking camera by accident. If I see that dancing guy one more time, I'm going to do nothing and probably still accidentally open that camera 1,000 more times. This comment is from 6 years ago, and the narrator has just tried swiping left a few times to see whether he can make some kind of camera appear, and at the very least it doesn't seem to be a thing on my Facebook app anymore. So maybe they did realize how terrible it was. Now we just have to deal with all the many other things terrible about Facebook. Whatever Yahoo did to Flickr. Yahoo tends to do that. I'm really curious on how Yahoo is turning a profit, or at least had enough presence to make Verizon want them. Yahoo is like that one kid who was super cool freshman year, but by senior year he became the creep selling substances and hitting on middle schoolers. For a search engine, they really don't do their job well. So many ads on their page. F me sideways, the company that got majorly hacked was actually doing pretty well for itself. Who knew? My mouse has pop-ups in the system tray. My mouse has pop-ups in my system tray. ES File Explorer for Android. It used to be a nifty little program. Now it's laden with ads, irritating notifications, etc. A textbook example of bloatware. Skype, the mobile version. It was very practical, simple to use before. Since June or so, it became meh. Copying Instagram and Messenger's trends with these moment things, a terrible UI and even a lack of functionalities from the previous versions. Oh, this applies to the PC version too. Skype sucks and Discord's got video chat now and does everything Skype did better. Honestly, the only thing I want is screen share with sound, then I can say Skype is 100% dead. When Hulu announced they'd be updating their interface, I was excited because they have a great content library, but the interface wasn't super good. It feels like they made it worse on purpose. Its dumpster fire of an interface on Android makes me question every person who worked on it. That's how I feel about Amazon Prime on anything but a PC. I know there's good stuff in there, but it's a pain in the butt looking for it. And it's pretty awful on the PC as well. I really haven't looked over there in a while, but the last time I did, they had seasons of shows as the main content for the show instead of the show name. For example, if they had Supernatural over there, instead of searching for Supernatural and finding that show and clicking in to look at seasons, you'd find like 11 separate entries of the show listed Supernatural, season, number, all in alphabetical order. So it looked like this: Supernatural Season 8, Supernatural Season 11, 5, 4, 9, 1, 7, 6. Next page of results: Supernatural Season 10, Season 3, Supernatural Season 2. Really fricking helpful all round. Subscriptions for literally everything. You can't even buy software anymore, only rent. I'm looking at you, Adobe. Torrenting Adobe products is great. No monthly fees and no updates. Pyrex glass kitchenware. They used to be the gold standard in high-quality tempered glass products. But in 1998 they changed from borosilicate glass to soda lime glass, which was supposed to be cheaper and lighter, but it's less heat-resistant and breaks more easily. Whenever a news site has a video clip embedded at the top of the article that autoplays, and then fricking follows me down the page in a little embedded window in the corner while continuing to play "Frick you, go away," and then it autoplays another video that has nothing to do with the article you're trying to read. Oh, what's that? You're listening to a music or podcast while you're reading the article? Not anymore. I'm taking over the sound. Every iOS update never fails to remove a feature I like or make something worse. Star Wars Galaxies, a great MMO that was ruined by improving it with combat and class system overhaul in order to compete with WoW. This only drove away the players and completely killed the game. They did it twice. A lot of people weren't happy with the original combat upgrade, but the new game experience really drove people away. I really liked the original tree progression system. It was a really good game before they messed it all up. Almost every news or sports website redesign that adds white space, reduces readability, and removes critical content and relevant links to provide more space for social media tie-ins, irrelevant video clips, and invasive ad space. Content is being Twitterized. I keep wondering why all these news and article sites only had a strip of text in the center 25% of the screen. Everything else was just white space. Then I saw one on a friend's computer without ad block. Holy frick, how do people stand that? When I have to use a computer at school or when a site makes you whitelist it, it's such a horrible barrage on your senses. Feels like Fahrenheit 451. Can't think about the news because "Buy Pepsi" is dominating your attention. Hyundai now has an alarm on the dashboard that makes a piercing ding every time it detects the roadway is colder than 40 degrees. I live in North Idaho. I would do anything to disable that fricking alarm. Anything. Whatever the frick they did with mac and cheese, the Kraft brand. I saw a commercial semi-recently where they were all proud saying that they changed the recipe and nobody noticed. Bullcrap. I fricking noticed and I don't like it anymore. Didn't even notice, yeah. They didn't change it a little, it just doesn't even taste like it used to. You should check out the bulk mac and cheese powder at Bulk Barn. It's not exactly like old KD, but it's closer than the new garbage. Plus, now I can have radiatorian cheese instead of elbow noodles. The narrator did not understand any part of all this American product discussion, but figured he would enlighten any American viewers that are missing Kraft brand mac and cheese to the existence of this alternative from whatever or whoever Bulk Barn is. Is Bulk Barn a large gentleman called Barney? I'll never know. Heinz used to make hot ketchup that was insanely delicious. Then some buttwipe decided that it needed co-branding, so they put Tabasco in it, and now it's Heinz hot and spicy with Tabasco, and it tastes like butt. Almost all of YouTube's updates. First, the channel list update. Before you had your feed and you to your right, and all of your subscribed channels appeared on a black bar. Then they turned it into some stupid tabs thing. Probably the worst in my opinion is the comment section update. Now pressing view replies takes you to a different page with just that comment, instead of listing them right underneath the comment. Also, whenever I try to scroll through the comments, it always acts like I want to reply. Also, the trending tab and the share tab. The trending tab always has such stupid crap in it, and I don't think that anyone uses the shared tab at all. Most of these are on mobile, but if you're on your desktop, you probably won't notice them. Oh, this is easy. Angry fricking birds. Formerly one of the most fun apps, now ad-ridden garbage and a sign of the mobile industry. I don't even mind the ads that much if the game is free, but the energy system crap is insane. The guy who invented that and anyone who funds that behavior should be launched into the sun. Freaking garbage. Energy system? Oh god, is that as bad as it sounds? Yep. You only get so much energy per day, and when you run out, you can't play unless you pay with premium currency. So not only do you have to pay to play, you have to keep paying to keep playing. It literally boggles my mind that people actually fork over money just to play more. Yik Yak used to be a fantastic social media app catered towards college kids a few years ago. It was basically an anonymous Twitter specifically for your geographic location. It was fantastic for news and updates about campus events and seeking help or advice from fellow students. You could even view Yik Yaks at other colleges around the US. Then they decided to add optional usernames, and that started a downward descent into what was essentially a rip-off of Facebook. Users left in droves, and they shut down for good this past summer. It was a shame too, because at its peak it was a must-have for any college kid at a decent-sized school. This sucked for more than just students. I work for a university, and yes, faculty and staff downloaded the app, mostly just for a good laugh. Most of us didn't care what everyone was saying, but what it was fantastic about was an unfiltered forum for real, legitimate complaints. I can think of 2 or 3 things that got addressed and resolved more or less as a direct result of the app. It always amazes me that these people are able to go from an app worth millions to killing it in a few short months. Or that whoever made the design choice for usernames wasn't promptly fired when they were overwhelmingly negatively received. Apparently, the best approach was to let them continue down that path instead. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm convinced hot Cheetos use less and less chili powder over time, and it makes them suck. I'm convinced the same thing happened to Sour Patch Kids. Either they wimped out on the sour, or I became immune to its effects. Imgur requiring you to log in to upload pictures from a phone. Instagram's non-chronological feeds, in my opinion. It annoyed me so much I barely use it anymore. I love checking Facebook and seeing a post from a good friend. I'm having a beer at X. Anyone keen to join me? Posted 2 days ago. Do I go? Will he still be there? Half of the practical uses of social media no longer work. This happens on an almost daily basis on Instagram. I'll see a comic post about a show happening tonight in 10 hours. Plenty of time to make plans and come out. Then I check and the post was from 22 hours ago. Unfortunately, this is the reality of practically every form of social media. It's very difficult to monetize a chronological feed purely with ads, so they change it to top liked or something else, which is very easy to monetize. Just give us some money and we'll make sure your post stays at the top of your followers' feed for 24 hours. Car alarms. Not once have I heard one and thought, my god, someone is breaking into that car. I hear it and go, who effed up now? My friend borrowed his wife's car and accidentally set the alarm off at a gas station. He couldn't figure out how to get it to turn off, and the manual for the car wasn't in the car for some reason. So he just drove it home with the alarm blaring the whole time. No one stopped him or did anything. They completely ignored it. LinkedIn after their design overhaul. You used to just be able to scroll down to browse through a person's projects, awards, and achievements. Now, entire sections are reduced to just 1-sentence-long, vague descriptions. And the profiles just look fugly now. You have huge amounts of white space and teeny tiny little profile pictures, which are now circular too, to make it even more awkward. Not sure what I was supposed to improve, but I freaking hate how half the space on modern smartphones is eaten up by apps I don't use and can't uninstall. Yes. Frick that, man. It's basically a false advertisement. Yeah, here's our 16GB phone, but 11GB are all apps you never use and can't delete. Still 16GB though. Have fun with your 2 whole apps of your choice. Maybe the narrator is a freak, but he's never once in his life, from the first iPhone to his modern Samsung, used up all the storage on his device. Is that weird? Anything Facebook does. Remember when Facebook was chronological and genuinely about what you and your mates were up to? And now it's just glorified cloud storage for memes, financed by irrelevant ads. Don't get me wrong, man likes a meme. It's just not why I joined some 8 years ago. Do you want a rip-off of Snapchat story on your phone? Do you want every photo you take to give you a forced pop-up asking you to want to add this? Do you want listing yourself as going to an event to automatically create a dummy chat with everyone else listed as going? Do you want every friend request to create a dummy chat? Do you want swiping down on the app, the universal refresh motion, to instead open a camera? No? Well, tough crap, because you're getting it anyway. For real, I don't need my eggplant pics popping up on Facebook asking if I want to post them. No, I'm good, thanks. Microtransactions in console games. I get it in Facebook games and mobile games that are free, but in a game I've already paid $60 for, it's some BS. It puts people who don't want to pay more at a competitive disadvantage. They act like they're kindly offering us a shortcut, but microtransactions always make the game drag more, because they want to make you frustrated with a lack of progress, so you'll buy a booster pack or some crap. Same goes for pre-order bonuses and Day 1 DLC. They want to make you pay extra for that stuff that should already be in the game. Like, before I was fine paying like $5 for some good maps way after the game was released. Now though, they plan out selling you the game in pieces. It's ridiculous. Also, the games that make you grind so much, you're willing to buy whatever the frick it is. Frick the game industry, man. Microsoft buying out Skype. Skype has turned into a crappier version of the retired MSN. I exclusively use Discord now. There's actually a German word for this whole concept. Verschlimmbesserung, meaning an improvement that makes something worse. I'd say the iPhone, and now Pixel losing the headphone jack, is a great example of this. I think some video game patches are examples as well, when the balance or mechanical changes alter something you enjoyed about a game. Whatever the frick they did to honeycomb cereal. I bought one box and I'm never buying it again. New bigger honey taste, my butt. Yes. Why? Why would you do such a horrible thing to a delicious cereal? Let me usher you into a paradise known as the Whole Foods Bar. This was a bar that was perfect in my opinion. It's a bar that is situated right in the middle of Whole Foods. They serve wine and beer, and all around the magnificent island of a bar is the wine and beer section full of anything you could possibly want. All you had to do was walk over and pick one of the hundreds of anything, and the bar will open it for you and serve it in a glass. Not only that, but you could grab any protein and almost anything else from the grocery store, with a beer or wine in hand, mind you, and bring it back and have the bar staff cook it for you for free. Crab? Done. Meatloaf? Cooked and ketchuped. Not only that, but they had amazing specials. A beer and a pizza for two? $10. It didn't matter what the beer was. Beer and wings, beer and burger, etc. It was amazing. Awesome bartenders that knew what they were doing. Awesome patrons who were friendly. Actually got my job as an associate architect by meeting someone there. Awesome atmosphere. And while I drank, the girlfriend can go shopping and then join me afterwards. But they wrecked it. They remodeled, which is a fancy way of saying that they were removing all of the awesome things that we liked and just turned it into a smaller restaurant with 15 seats in total. You can only order from the restaurant and can't bring in grocery food or beer or wine. They turned over their entire staff, prices went up, and specials are no longer a thing. God. This is in Florida when I lived there. Also, the way I understood it, they were either profiting or at the very least breaking even depending on the time of year. I think the bar was supposed to be set up as a loss leader originally anyway, but it actually ended up doing very, very well, so they'd been talking about expanding it for a while. They first added a fee of $2.50 to cook whatever, which is fine, I understand that, but the rest of it sucked. I do not shop at Whole Foods anymore, it was out of the way and the prices aren't the best. I'm sure they lost a lot of other customers like me. Well, having the workers cook the food you just bought off the shelf sounds way too good to be true in the first place. Apple Magic Mouse. When you could use AA batteries, it was perfect. Then they swapped that for internal rechargeable batteries. Okay, so far so good, but then they put the fricking charger point underneath the mouse. Some F-wit designer at Apple didn't want to put the charging point on the front of the mouse so that you could actually use it while it charges, because people might end up using it as a corded mouse. They deliberately disabled the mouse for the entire time you have to charge it, meaning you have to use a second mouse while you charge it. Unbelievable. The Windows Tile Start menu. If I'm on a PC, I don't need a menu that looks like it's built for tablets. And if I'm deploying 15,000 Windows machines to be used solely for business, 0 of them need Candy Crush installed. If I'm building PCs to play video games on, 0 of them need Candy Crush installed. No PCs should ever have Candy Crush on them. Keurig cup verification. Every time YouTube changes its layouts. I rage every time, yet I can't even remember what the last layout looked like. Every update from Outlook or Hotmail in the past few years. iTunes used to be awesome, but literally every update to it has left it worse and worse. The last non-horrible one was in 2013. They've made it so much more complicated to download old CDs and then put them in a device. Guys, I'm not rebuying hundreds of albums again. Quit being jerks. I remember when iTunes let you stream your library. You could go to work and just connect back home and listen to all your music. It was amazing. Yeah, we built up libraries based on our friends' libraries and just had mega collections, but it was amazing. I don't even know if they do library sharing anymore. Shapes. It's a national meme in Australia. The new ones are absolutely disgusting. Fortunately, they decided to restock the old ones. Thank God that some companies have humans running them. I remember living in the Southern Hemisphere, and along with Tim Tams, shapes were a culinary highlight of existing there. Glad to hear that they heard sense. Netflix changing their ratings from stars to match percentage. I hate it. Also, when you're looking at titles, the trailer starts playing right away. I hate that too. I hate the percentages too, but even worse, the plots they give. She never knew that becoming herself could change everything about the world around her. I just made that up, but that's basically the amount of information they give you about almost every movie. And yet they have no problem showing plot-sensitive information in the little trailer reel that autoplays without a choice in the matter. I get that there's a statute of limitations for spoilers on old movies, but come on! There's an award-winning trilogy on Netflix with a character who dies in the first movie, and yet they show up in the first clip of their stupid autoplay reel for the second movie. Like, oh geez, I wonder who comes back to life now. I'd be annoyed if I was watching those for the first time. UIs that have all of the options and buttons tucked away to make it look clean and minimal. It's like every designer is afraid of showing users more than 8 buttons at a time, even if it isn't practical. CNN and BBC autoplay videos. CNN is particularly egregious because the video follows you as you scroll through the article. Replacing the waxed paper wrappers on Reese's peanut butter cups with plastic ones prevented them from drying out, but it also made them wet and oily. Give me the old, slightly crunchy, slightly bloomed version any day. Also, Hershey's chocolate bars are nothing like the ones from the 1970s, partially for similar reasons. Removing the broken footstep tracker in Pokemon Go. It worked originally, so instead of fixing it, they spent months making a crappier one. That whole app is filled with improvements. They were so focused on adding codes to prevent third-party tracking that they made the game unnecessarily more demanding on your hardware. Walks out of a building? Are you a passenger? Switching Coke from glass bottles to plastic. Plastic is the worst when drinking it. Glass is the best and keeps it cooler. Aluminium cans are second best. Plastic last by far. Costco smoothies. Growing up, they were amazing. Suddenly, this year they came out with a healthier version that tasted like crap. Such a bummer. Why did they do that? Obviously, this 2-foot-long hot dog, greasy pizza, and syrupy smoothie isn't healthy. What in the frick? What family secret was finally spilled in your family? That my parents had to get married. They'd always told us they got married in 1961, but it was 1962, 3 months before my sister was born. What's amusing is that my father was an accountant who was insanely fast with math. Whenever he was asked how many years they'd been married, he'd be off by 1. My mother would correct him through clenched teeth, and then my father would nod and agree. When my paternal grandfather died, the federal government reached out to do a state funeral. He had been career Army and a colonel, so we didn't question it. Then the funeral came and they went all out. Huge procession, people showing up who were really big names, like heads of departments, senators, retired senators, people from the CIA and State Department. It was nuts, and we were all super confused. Turns out he was a key dude in the OSI during World War II, and when the OSI splintered into the CIA and Secret Service, he went the Secret Service route. He wasn't on White House detail, but instead worked in a covert office that dealt with counterfeiting and currency. He went blind when I was a toddler and retired from the army. For whatever reason, he told no one about all his covert work with the OSI and Secret Service, and the only person who knew, my grandmother, was sworn to secrecy and never told anyone. My father grew up thinking he was just a colonel working on base. Only after his death were we given all sorts of cool crap like publications by him, lectures given by him, and all kinds of things from various things he did and was known for. All I knew him as was a blind old man who was perpetually smoking, drinking, and being a crotchety geezer. Turns out he was a bad mother effer, and all but none of us knew. My great-grandmother wasn't actually Mexican, but was rather adopted by a Mexican family from a Chinese family who was being kicked out of Mexico when railroad construction was over. She always had more typically Asian features but only spoke Spanish, and it was never really questioned. 23andMe is a hell of a thing. My mother is kid number 7 out of 10. My aunt, kid number 4, who was born in 1945, did her DNA test and found out that she has a different father from everyone else. She was devastated. There was always a rumor that there was an affair, but nobody talked about it. She has so many questions, but nobody's alive to answer her. My grandparents are first cousins. An uncle on the same side of the family is in prison for the assassination of a Mexican presidential candidate in the 90s. His family still says he was framed and is innocent. Oh boy, way to lead with a kind of eyebrow-raising secret and then completely overshadow it with a tale of murder and corruption. Has anyone made a movie about your family? This is kind of messed up, but my parents told me my mum had a bad back because I pushed on her spine during birth. This is what I thought all my childhood. I think I was in my teens when my older brother told me my dad pushed my mum during an argument and she fell and had to have surgery. I thought I ruined my mum's back my entire childhood, and those SOBs let me believe it. When I was 5 years old in 1988, Santa Claus left a Nintendo on our front porch. It was wrapped in newspaper, and my parents had no idea who gifted it to us. My dad particularly tried to figure it out. He was always suspicious that it had been a family friend. It was by far the best gift of the year, and we played it all the time throughout our childhood. My dad died in 2004. Last Christmas, my mum explained that she was the one who had bought it and surreptitiously placed it on the front porch. My dad really likes to be in control of things and had forbidden the purchase. She knew better. She didn't tell a soul for 30 years. Thanks, Mum. I see a lot of stories about people finding out that who they thought were their parents weren't the people raising them, and this one is a little bit different. My dad always thought his father who raised him wasn't his biological dad, and the father thought the same. He was treated terribly by his father because the father was told he couldn't have children and my father was born prematurely, but at a healthy weight. So everyone assumed that my grandmother had an affair and got pregnant with my dad. It was to the point where after my grandmother died, my grandfather failed to even mention to his new wife that he had a son and grandchild, me. Years later, my dad gets an ancestry DNA test for him and me. He finds out that his dad was actually his bio-dad. It was shocking and sad. Found out that my grandma had a baby as a teenager and was forced to give him up for adoption by my great-grandparents. 40 years later, he found us. The same thing happened to my mom. I'm 33 now. Older half-brother is roughly 35. I hold hope that I'll meet him one day. My father's brother killed 4 people when he was in high school. My father was the one who found out and told the police. My de facto uncle, he and my aunt never married but have been together since well before I was born, with a few hiccups, has a child with another woman. It became common knowledge when the girl was 6 and was starting to understand the situation. At first, it was a bit scandalous, but she's been welcomed with open arms by my entire family, including her half-siblings' maternal grandparents. She's treated the same as all the other kids her age. Her half-sister, my cousin, has a daughter the same age and they're best friends and go to the same high school, totally inseparable, technically aunt and niece. She comes to all our family events and she's an awesome kid. We're all stoked to have her in our family. After my mum died, I found out the real story behind my grandparents' marriage. She came to my father's country to visit some of her relatives. Met my father, and after just 1 week, she asked him to marry her so she could stay in the country. My father accepted because he had no one else, and his parents were pressing him to get married already. But the highlight of the story is that over some time, the two of them fell in love with each other. Their love only grew over the time, and they were really happy together. My mother spent her last days very ill, and she would accept only my father by her bedside. He swears to this day that she was an angel sent from God to take care of him. I'm shocked that they got married just like that, out of the blue, and ended up loving each other so deeply. I can only hope to have as good and loving marriage as they had. My uncles are infamous criminals who killed multiple people. I thought they bred dogs. Well, they may have also bred dogs. Ha! My mum's family, she always heard that her uncles were at Ohio State since she was a teenager, and never learned until she was in her 30s that it was actually Ohio State Penitentiary because they were in the mob. About a month ago, my mother-in-law's 88-year-old sister revealed on her deathbed that her husband's best friend was actually the father of all 4 of her children. Her husband was a bullying grade-A jerk by all accounts. While everyone was shocked, no one was saddened by this news. Did the friend know? Yes, he contacted with all 4 of the children, the youngest is in his 50s, within hours of her passing. Also, one of the son's first comments was, "Is that why he gave me his old car when I needed one back in college?" My uncle served in Vietnam. While over there, his troop found a baby that had been orphaned or abandoned. They're not sure. My uncle was shipping back to Australia soon and wanted to adopt him, but my aunt said no. They'd only been married about 4 months when he was drafted, so while I don't agree with my aunt's actions and generally don't like her as a person, I can understand why she said no. My uncle's troop found a family to raise the baby, and that's the story the whole family knows. To clarify, I'm child-free, and if my husband was in this situation, I'd probably say no as well. It's not the fact she said no to adopting the kid that makes me dislike her for this, it's her reason. She's very racist against Asian people. Doesn't matter what part of Asia, she hates them. She's the kind of person who will yell, "Go back to your country," at random strangers who even vaguely look like they might have Asian ancestry. She also cut off contact with my cousin, her daughter, because my cousin's husband is half Japanese. She said in front of my family with no shame that if the kid hadn't been Asian, she would have said yes to adopting him. The secret is that my uncle and some other guys from his troop stayed in contact with the family and the kid, sending them money every month to help raise him and then help him go to university, and eventually helped him and his adoptive family move to Australia in the late 90s. My aunt and the rest of my family had no idea all this time. It only came out when my aunt and uncle divorced in 2017 and she had a forensic accountant go through their bank records. She worked at a bank for like 40 years and always noticed the money missing, but his reasons were always justified. Since we all know now, my uncle has introduced some of us to this guy and his family. They're really lovely people. It sounds like everyone won at some point in the story. The kid won by not being adopted by this woman and being financially supported. The family won by being introduced to the kid later in life, and the uncle won by divorcing the aunt. Everyone wins. We found out after my grandfather died that none of his 7 children with my grandmother were his, and that they all likely had different fathers. I only just recently heard about this, but my grandmother had gotten a little drunk with my dad and brother a month or so ago and started talking about our great-uncle Ferber. And from what I heard, he apparently killed quite a few people and buried them on some family-owned land in a swamp. The nanny I had when I was younger was actually my dad's attempted sister wife. She found out how bat-crap crazy he was and dipped. He's into polygamy and nearly had her convinced to be their third and everything. She came to her senses, thank God. He's not a nice man. My great-grandfather didn't die of cancer. He died from complications after being shot when one of his businesses was being robbed. Or so we'd heard. He also spent a lot of time in Atlantic City. He also had a lot of partners in Teamsters and other unions in coal country. Also, everyone called him Smiling Tony, but his name wasn't Tony. He died in the 60s, long before my time, but when my great-grandmother died 20 years ago, a very old guy showed up to the funeral in a white suit and all of the oldest people in my family kissed his hand. When I asked, no one knew who he was. My grandfather moved his family away from central Pennsylvania in the late 60s and disconnected from all of this. But there it is. I always wonder how long it will be before my neighbors figure out their daddy is a dealer or a little crooked. There was that one time in Christmas he got shot in the leg stealing from a farm and hobbled around for weeks. He's trying to go straight right now. I heard an absolute blowout fight like 2 months ago. As soon as the bigger kids left with the grandparents, the missus was smoking ice in the house, and he screamed at her about not doing that in the house, not wanting the kids to see. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was 28, I found out that my dad was not my biological father. The news came out via the following. My dad was battling depression and a number of other serious problems, so I had just flown home to try and take care of him and rescue him from my mum's wrath. My mum had verbally and emotionally beaten him down during their entire relationship. He loved her so much and he tolerated it. Well, during a solemn walk with my dad, as I tried to help him out, he confided that he's not my bio dad. And he went on to tell me that he knew this all along, but my mum lied to him and tried to convince him that he was my bio dad. He knew he wasn't, but he wanted to play the role. When I was 10 years old, my mum finally confessed this to him, and he was worried that upon hearing the news officially, he'd somehow let this affect his relationship with me. So when I was 28 years old, during this walk with my dad, as he pours out the story to me, he frames it by telling me that his two most proud moments in his life are 1. How I turned out and his raising me, and 2. That he had completely forgotten about the news my mum told him earlier in that day, when I was 10, about him not being my bio dad, and that it was only upon tucking me in at night, when I was 10, that it briefly crossed his mind. It was at that point that he knew nothing would ever come between us and our father-son relationship would be as awesome as ever. He also confided that my mum did hard substances while pregnant with me, and this broke his heart to witness firsthand. They were very poor. My dad grew up in a foster home without parents. My mum grew up with 6 siblings and ill-equipped parents. She dropped out of 9th grade, whereas all of her other siblings dropped out earlier. Many of them are barely literate. I'm now mid-30s and tragically, my dad ended things in mid-March 2020, right as COVID was hitting. I was out of the country at the time, but immediately flew 30 hours, 30-minute layover, and made it in time for his funeral. I do everything in his honor. My grandmother recently died. She was famous in our town for her amazing cooking and catering, in particular her turkey dinners. Notably, her gravy was absolutely amazing, so delicious. She had a heart attack several years ago and her near-death experience convinced her to share some of her secret recipes with me, all except for her gravy recipe. When she died this spring, I was going through her pantry and found an entire bucket of KFC gravy mix. She was literally using KFC gravy mix as a base to make her incredible gravy. Huge scandal. Faking gravy has got to be the most charming family secret out of all the horrible crap in this story group. My great-great-grandfather was exiled and banned from Missouri for being a sheep thief. We went to my grandmother's for Christmas dinner like we did every year, and my uncle drank too much and kind of hinted that he had an affair with my mother. A couple of months and 2 DNA tests later, we found out my sister is actually his daughter. My dad never spoke to his brother again, and of course my parents got divorced, and I needed a lot of therapy and chocolate. God, we're trash. Great-grandparents' 60th anniversary party at a hotel ballroom, with my cousins and second cousins who hadn't seen each other in years. My mum and I were talking to my grandfather. My mum said, "Wow, I haven't seen Chuck, Fred, and Claire in years." Me? "No kidding. When do you think we'll get a group this big back together again?" Mum said, "Gramps' birthday is in 6 months. We'll see some people then." 6 months? Isn't it his 60th? There was a long silence, and then Gramps said, "Huh, I never thought about that." My grandfather was 60 when he realized his parents had a shotgun wedding. I was 35 when my mother finally admitted to me that she had been lying about who my birth father was. She waited until after I'd reached out to his other children, and we all thought we were siblings. He later confirmed I wasn't his. She refused to tell me who my biological father really was. When my sister was diagnosed with cancer and her survival chances were low, it inevitably came out that she wasn't my sister. My parents must have felt we should all know the truth just in case. She survived treatment and will always be my sister. I found out my uncle is actually my brother, but my mum had him when she was so young that my grandparents raised him. Due to 23andMe, my dad learned that his recently deceased father wasn't actually his bio dad. It wasn't a situation related to grandma cheating either, it was a donation, so they knew this was the case his entire life. Pretty crazy that they never told him. His parents didn't pass until he was 65 years old. Talk about a curveball. Well, we all knew that there would be a bunch of infidelity and surprise relatives in this particular story grouping, so excuse me for choosing one of the few that wasn't depressing. My mum and older brother are not biologically related to me. My bio mum died sometime after I was born, leaving me, my sister, and my dad behind. My brother was the one that told me. My parents never told me because they wanted to protect me from the truth, but my brother thought that was a bullcrap reason for me not to know. I don't know if my parents know that I know the truth, but I don't want to bring it up either. My mum had immigrated here along with my older brother when he was a kid. My dad also immigrated here, and my sister and I were born after he came. I don't know much about our family history beyond that. My brother revealed this info when I was about 18. He isn't the type to lie about something like this. He also said my sister is apparently aware of the truth because she has a memory of my bio mum being in physical contact with her. I don't think too differently about my family because of this. My mum is still my mum. My grandma didn't drive. I thought she couldn't, but it was just never discussed. One day when I was maybe 7 or 8, I'd been trying to get anyone, to drive me to the store for candy. We were visiting my aunt and uncle. Grandma lived with them. They had bitter honey at the local store, which I could no longer get at home. But no one would take me to the store. Finally, I said I'd just ask Grandma, and my cousin chimes in with, "Grandma can't drive." "Oh, you bet your sweet butt I can drive, they just don't let me." Grandma had overheard and she was in high dudgeon. But that's all that was said about it, and my aunt finally took me to the store, so I forgot about it. Years later, when I'd just gotten my license, I asked my mum what was up with Grandma not driving. She explained that during Prohibition times, Grandma bootlegged alcohol for moonshiners. She was very successful at it. She was so successful at it that when the moonshiners were finally busted, even though the reviewers never caught my grandma, her license was suspended by the state to never be reissued. Later in life, she was told she could petition for it back, but it came with an admission of guilt or some such. She told them to go to hell. The scars on an elder family's wrists were not from a botched attempt at their own life. They were from her mum trying to protect herself and her kids from the approaching Red Army. That was at the end of World War II in Germany. This made it so much worse. My dad fathered a child in high school. His side of the family knew, and my mum. We found out years after he had died that we have a half-sister. Here's how we found out. Dad got a girl pregnant and she decided to go it alone. She moved across the state and had my half-sister. She met a guy, married, and he raised her like she was his own. They had no other children. She didn't reveal my dad's identity until after he died. Apparently she contacted my grandma and mum, but they kept it from us. Years later, half-sister has a kid with medical issues and needs to know the family medical history. She contacts mum and grandma, who again don't tell us. Meanwhile, after Dad died, my uncle had prints made of a favorite picture of Dad. He gets them framed and gives them to all us kids as well as my grandma, aunts and uncles. Mum gets a picture to our half-sister after their secret meeting. Fast forward another few years, my brother and his roommates live in a large nearby city and hit a bar and pick up and bring home some ladies to sleep over. The next morning, my half-sister sees a photo of my dad on the mantel, turns white and asks, "Whose picture is that?" "That's my roommate's dad. He died a long time ago." "I need to talk to your roommate." She lived her entire life across state, hundreds of miles. Her friend was going to school in a large city near our hometown. She was visiting and they decided to go to a bar. They got picked up by my brother and his roommate. That's how we found out. My brother went to my grandma and asked. After my grandfather passed, we found out that he had fathered a child when he was posted in Italy during World War II. He never knew. His mother intercepted any letters from the Italian girl. He came home, met and married my grandmother, and had 4 children. I forget who in the family found out and how. It's crazy to think that we have a whole Italian family out there. My oldest aunt is 77, so this kid would be at least 79 by now, I would think. We've considered doing the DNA testing, but some family members aren't comfortable with how those companies could use the information. It's a really sad story, but if his mother hadn't intercepted the letters, I wouldn't exist. It's a weird place to be in emotionally. My sister cheated on her husband throughout her entire marriage to the point that all 3 of her kids have different biological fathers. That my grandfather was an atomic soldier. Instead of sending him to fight in the Korean War, they sent him to Nevada, where, after having him turn away from the initial flash, he witnessed the mushroom cloud. After that was over, he was ordered to march to the detonation point, where he was unwittingly exposed to high amounts of radiation. Luckily for my family, my grandpa is now in his 90s, even after a few cancer scares, and the rest of us, my mum, aunt, cousins, sister and I, are cancer-free and fairly healthy. But this is medical information that we really should have known earlier. What budget purchase ended up being your best buy ever? I was traveling in Japan and needed nail clippers. All I could find is this cheap pink Hello Kitty grooming kit. These clippers are the best I've ever owned. They have stayed sharp and functional for 20 years. I'm very protective of them. Everyone in the house knows you don't touch Dad's pink Hello Kitty nail clippers. And if you do, you perish. A guy said there were a bunch of bricks in his backyard he wanted to get rid of. $5 for all of them if you'd come and pick them up because they were larger than regular bricks and very heavy. I grabbed a friend and headed out because I needed some cheap bricks for the edging of my garden. Guy's house was across the river and in some really run-down looking neighborhood. Really glad I grabbed my friend at this point. We pull up and the guy is waiting outside. He looks like he's 80, but I know he must have been a 35-year-old guy who just smoked 10 packs a day. So the guy takes us to his backyard and shows us the pile of bricks, which turns out to be 50-plus antique Louisville fire bricks. So I look at the guy and tell him, I'll take half of them, and as payment I'll give you $20 and some advice. And of course, the guy is looking at me like I'm an idiot, but he accepts my money and helps me and my friend load up about 30 bricks. After I close my truck and get in the car to drive off, I tell him to Google the antique fire bricks and adjust his Craigslist listing. I went back to look at the listing a few days later, and he had changed the price from $5 for the whole pile to $5 per brick, which was the going rate at the time. Nowadays, they go for $20 per brick. Best buy ever. A seed packet from the dollar store. While in college, my boyfriend and I were broke. Really broke. But I still wanted to do something to celebrate spring. We were getting a few cheap things at the dollar store when I noticed they were selling these seed packets from a big old bin that you had to dig through. 4 for $1. No tax. I immediately begged to buy one despite our strict budget. Boyfriend was incredulous I'd want to buy sketchy seeds, but dutifully handed me a quarter. I ended up picking out tomatoes. Well, we got home and I carefully placed about 3 seeds in washed out cans. I watered them and watched them sprout. I loved tending to my little garden. I ended up with 3 beautiful, huge tomato plants. It was a bumper crop, more than we could eat. I sold the extra produce to my classmates. I made about $25. Good seeds. For the umpteenth time, the narrator is resisting the urge to buy a plot of land, some seeds, and live out his Stardew Valley dreams. Not yet, not yet. My dad bought me a flannel jacket for $2 from the equivalent of a dollar store in 1994. Wore it for everything you can think of. I wore it yesterday. Still going strong after 25 years.
It's amazing that the jacket held up, yes, but special kudos to you for still being able to fit in it for 25 years.
I was traveling from a different city straight into work, where my uniform was a white shirt with a conspicuously black bra. Wasn't stopping home, so I did stop on the first corner store I found and bought a $5 white bra that looked roughly my size, as they had nowhere to try them on, just to wear for one night at work. 10 out of 10, comfiest bra I ever owned. Wore it every day of my life for about a year. It gave in at some point, but it was still a $5 bra. But gosh darn, I dream of the day when all of my bras fit that well. I too have a bra of mystery. First strike, I brought it from a grocery store. Second strike, it was marked down to $2 and plastered with stickers reading, "Final sale, no returns. We're not liable if this kills you. I'm sure there are people who love you," and the like. Third strike, upon ringing it through, the cashier did a double take at the screen, looked at me with great concern, and asked if I was sure I wanted to buy it. After failing to self-combust and send me straight to hell, it wound up being one of the nicest bras I ever had. Wore it for 2 years before the inevitable underwire chest shanking. I still wonder what they thought was wrong with it. I was giving these college-aged women a lift ride. One asks how that Craigslist thing went, so my ears perked up. The other says something like, "He complained it went back too far, just don't put it back so far, duh." Eventually I deduce that they're talking about a recliner, which I've been looking for one for some time now. I interject and ask about it. The lady has a Lazy Boy electric recliner she just wants $20 for. I'm like, listen, I know it's sketchy, but if you've got Craigslist randos in your house, Lyft at least gave me a background check. We pull up, I end the ride and follow these ladies into their house. I knew I wanted it as soon as I laid eyes on it, so this college chick is helping me stuff a recliner into my back seat, and all I can think this is how Buffalo Bill kidnapped that girl in Silence of the Lambs. $20 for a recliner so lazy it reclines for me. The seller listed several 2-month-old kittens on Craigslist, first come, first serve. We pull up to an area of town known for its high crime and substance addicts at like 11 at night. Seller plops this impossibly tiny kitten into my hand wordlessly. She was only 3 weeks old, and the seller gave us some crap about how her sister's cat just had kittens, and she didn't want to make a whole new post about it. Kittens were listed for $10. The seller was asking for $15. All we had was a $20. I looked at my now fiancé, and we knew no one else was going to take care of this cat. We drove that kitten home in a laundry basket. Nearly 3 years later, that kitten is attached to my hip, and I can't think of a better $20 investment. I too bought my kitty for $20 on Craigslist from a legit crystal addict. I'd never had a cat before, and this little meow factory has been my best friend ever since. A no-label old beat-to-crap vinyl acetate record with handwritten "That'll be the day" on it, paid $1. Ended up being a live Buddy Holly recording. I sold it for $970. I bought a blanket in Mexico in 1986 for $5. I still have it and it's super soft and comfy. It's been abused, washed, and other things, and it's still in great shape. $12 rain boots at Value Village. I've thrashed these things living in rural Alaska, and they're still totally watertight 2 years later. Stain removers from the dollar store are surprisingly effective. I bought a tub of toothpaste called Right Clean, and then when I looked closely, the cap said Colgate, so I'm guessing companies sell their excess supply to dollar stores and just relabel the contents. I work as a day laborer at a plant that made mayonnaise. We probably made 30 different brands of mayo, from store brands to national brands. They would stop the filling machine, we would change the bottles, caps, and labels, then keep right on running, putting the same stuff out of the same vats into all the different bottles. I heard the same thing from a person who worked in a green bean factory. They'd just slap a different label and keep it rolling. I bought a small turtle from a gas station in Florida when I was in the 1st grade. Max proudly lived until the end of my senior year. I am loving all the cute pet stories coming out of this story grouping. Honestly, I just assumed it would be all Walmart and eBay finds. At the end of a long road trip with some mates, I brought a $20 pair of sunglasses in a gas station just outside Chicago. They fit me better than any pair of sunglasses ever did or ever will, and they made me look awesome. For years, I constantly received compliments about them and was asked where I got them. I lost them after 5 long years and have hated myself for it ever since. They were so no-name they didn't even have a brand name on them at all, so I have no idea who made them. I have no way of finding that gas station either. I've literally spent hundreds of bucks trying to find sunglasses that came close to that perfect fit and style, but I can't. I randomly found a wedding videographer online and booked him for a very affordable rate for my wedding, assuming it wouldn't be very good quality. 2 weeks after the wedding, he emails me a high-quality, well-edited video. He had a drone I hadn't noticed because he was outside of the venue getting B-roll with it before I even started getting ready for my big day. I was floored, and now I recommend him to everyone who ever plans to get married, ever. To update, he's definitely upped his prices since then, and rightfully so, because he does great work. He did the videography from my wedding last summer. I drive cars so old they all still have tape decks. I bought this fake cassette tape with a headphone-style plug that comes off it. You put the tape in the player just like it was a cassette and plug the jack into your phone, and it uses the car's speaker system as an external speaker for the phone. I was so skeptical of it working because it was all of $5 and I've been using it at least 10 years and it works perfectly and beautifully. Plus bonus side-eye every time I pull it out to use it with someone new in the car. I bought a $17 toaster about 20 years ago and it's still going strong. I went to buy a used lawnmower and ended up buying their very old dog for $10. He had never been allowed indoors, never rode in a car, went to a park, or had a bath. We had a good 5 years of firsts. Best $10 I ever spent. I bought a button-down shirt from the thrift store in the mid-90s and I still wear it today. The shirt is obviously even older. It doesn't have much wear on it either. I think it's made of rayon or something else. The brand is Kmart. They don't make them like they used to. A little $40 speaker set for my bedroom TV I got in 2006 and still works great in 2019. I bought a fake wood, plastic mantel clock from Value City for about $10 because I needed something for my first apartment. I received a surprising number of compliments on it and was asked more than once if it was a family heirloom because it looked so old. It also lasted for about 10 years until some movers broke it. I was kind of proud of displaying that stupid cheap clock. I was in a market in Shanghai, one of those ones that attracts foreigners with knockoffs of nice brands, where you're supposed to haggle a bit with the store owner. Walked into an electronics store looking for a portable speaker. Negotiated the store owner down over the JBL speaker that basically was the size of a thermos. I think she originally wanted 200 yuan for it, and I got it for 125. The exchange rate was about 6.5 yuan for $1, so it was about $21. The owner went out back and got a blank white box and an envelope. Inside the box was a blank speaker without decals. Decals were in the envelope. She then proceeded to put the decals on the speaker in front of me, using tweezers for precision. This was my very first time in China, so it really caught me off guard. The speaker is actually amazing. Very loud, 6 to 8 hours battery life, and perfect for storing in a cup holder. I mostly use it on a golf course, which is perfect. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. We bought an Ellis Island boat tour in New York from one of the guys on the streets. We were led into a van and treated extremely well, so we weren't immediately sketched out too badly. We don't know New York, so we ended up driving 20 minutes through Manhattan by 3 men to an apparently abandoned sketchy dock with no one else there. That's when we were convinced we were being scammed or sold into human trafficking. Gave us a post-it note with a number and they said to go around the abandoned factory to the pier and they were waiting for us. So we took our naive tourist butts around the building, alone, expecting nothing, and they would just pull off and scam us. Sure enough, we turned the corner and there was a big boat with a bunch of people and it was legit. We had an amazing tour and a lot of fun with free food and drinks. So overall, a great decision, but in hindsight, we should have been murdered or at least scammed.
I risked a huge box of magic cards. I spent around $200. It easily came out to about $2,000 or $3,000 worth. This box was just a random pickup on the internet from Craigslist. My best purchase of magic cards was a store under new management. I went in with my 2 elementary school-aged sons, as a mother that taught them to play, and I asked to purchase the 2 large boxes in bulk. But because they had not had time to catalog their cards, they agreed on 10 cents apiece. At least 2 of the cards combined were valued at $80, and I bought hundreds. It's been some years since I've played, at least 3 or 4 years since I've purchased any. I wonder how much they're valued at, but I don't have the heart to part from them. I started playing in '97, and I have cards prior to that. Fugly or sad and misshapen potted plants from the grocery store. They just need some love, and it's so fun to see them grow. This person is a dark mirror of the narrator who consistently buys nice plants and proceeds to kill them all over a period of weeks. Teach me your secrets, internet person. A $27 dash cam. I got it off Amazon. Its shaper image included an SD card and was $27. I thought it was going to be a waste. It wasn't. I have it on whenever I drive. Turns on automatically. Records automatically. You can turn auto rewrite on or off. Has a high-quality camera, infrared LEDs for nighttime driving, and the mounting mechanism works great. It's stable and has never fallen. It's not 4K recording, but it's 1080, high 120 FPS, and was $27. When some others can run up into the high hundreds, 10 out of 10 would buy again. 10 out of 10 would gift to someone. It actually works great and was $27. My dog was a stray, adopted by a couple but returned because he was too high energy. So his adoption fees were 50%, the best $45 I've ever spent. I went to Mexico a few years back with my family, and it was our first time there. We only left the hotel once because it was so gosh darn hot. On that day, after visiting an ancient temple, we decided to go to a cenote to swim and cool off. We arrived at the bus station and this kind of sketchy taxi driver approached us and asked where we wanted to go. My father mentioned a very popular cenote, but the taxi driver recommended a quieter place and said he'd do it for half price, even though it was already dirt cheap. For some reason, my father agreed, which I thought was mad. So me and my family got in his taxi and drove off. We were riding down the freeway when he starts indicating left. I see no road where he's indicating. We turn off onto a dirt track and into the jungle. For about 10 minutes, we were getting deeper and deeper into the jungle until we reach a house. My father is told to get out and pay at this small shack, and the rest of us aren't allowed out of the car. 5 minutes pass, and by this time we're freaking out in the car. I didn't really feel like getting kidnapped or anything, but my father returns and we continue into the jungle. Soon we reach a clearing with a few people smoking around a table, and a couple with swimsuits on. Now I'm a bit more relaxed because there are other customers there. After getting changed, we have a short walk to this beautiful, crystal-clear cenote with overhangs and plants hanging down. It was amazing. We got out and thought money well spent, but then we were led on a tour around 4 other cenotes where we swam under bats hanging in caves and learnt about the history of the cenotes. To top it off,
I got to jump off a 10-foot drop into a pool where I could see the bottom about 20 feet below the surface. Best experience we had in Mexico, and I'd love to go back, but I don't think I've ever been so frightened as I was going down that deserted dirt road. Went to a garage sale. There was a little girl in charge. She's like 12. I don't know crap about turntables, but she has a set on a table. I ask how much, and she tells me $20. I ask her if they work, and she tells me she has no idea. Her dad got new ones and wanted to get rid of these. I wait for Dad, and she tells me he's sleeping. She says, "Dude, just take them." I'm like, no, $20 can't be right. Maybe $200? She looks at me like I'm stupid. Fine, I'll take them for $20. I drive straight to the pawn shop and see what I can get for them, or if they even work. They frickin' work. The guy looks up prices and comes back with a $1,200 offer. The best $20 I've ever spent. I bought this shirt from a market for $5. It fits so darn well I've started using it as my main shirt. Knockoff North Face hiking shoes in Vietnam. They cost me $20. Kicked the crap out of them and they're still going strong. Bought some Britney Spears tickets in a back alley near the Phillips Arena, downtown Atlanta, from this sketchy guy. Our dumb butts were all excited because it was a great deal for the seating. Keep in mind, this is when tickets were printed from home, and they're huge to scan. The pair that we brought were the OG Ticketmaster tickets, you know, the tiny pair that you had to wait at FYE in the mall for. I got in line and go through the main door and they don't scan. Frick. We knew we were scammed immediately. Then they physically examine our tickets and say, "I don't know why these aren't scanning, but your seats are that way." Walk all the way down to our numbered section and there's one guy sitting in a chair by this massive wall with a single door to walk through. Homeboy physically examined our ghetto tickets. He's like, never seen these before. But he said, "This way, please," and I'll be damned. We're seated in the section where the local businesses buy the sweets and crap for their employees. Food and alcohol was free. We had phenomenal seats and got a free shirt and program. I still can't believe it happened. Not my purchase, but still one of the best. My brother gifted me a Snuggie one year for Christmas. I had painstakingly tracked down a bootleg album he wanted, and he got me a buy one, get one free Snuggie. I didn't speak to him for weeks. I've routinely used that damn Snuggie for every camping trip I've been on for the last 7 years, and I'll tell you it's become the most useful gift I've ever gotten. I bought official PlayStation wireless headphones for €20 a few years ago. They usually cost about €70 brand new. I thought it was a sketchy sale, but nope, they're fine and I still use them to this day. I got an adjustable phone mount at the dollar store when I had an iPhone 4. Still use the same one with my iPhone X. Well, that has to be the only case in recorded history of an iPhone accessory not being made redundant after 1 or 2 generations. $17 Target brand boat shoes. I bought them about 6 years ago and I just wore them randomly for things like going to the grocery store or running down to my car. Then I found they were great practice shoes for disc golf. They lasted 1.5 years of planting and twisting on concrete before they finally folded. Went back and they've been discontinued for years. Rest in peace. Target continually changes their clothing section, so if you like something, buy multiples of it, because it'll be gone or rebranded in like 6 months. Costco Fluffy Flannels. It feels like a chinchilla is hugging you, and I've had mine for 3 years with no signs of wearing down, despite almost daily use in the northeast winters. My wife got this fluffy fleece blanket from Costco, short on one side, long on the other, and oh my fricking god, I let nobody touch it but me. Flight cargo escort for discounted tickets. I flew to Shanghai from New York for about $200 total, on JAL business class. In return, I had to sign to take responsibility for cargo on the flight. I saw the cargo on the loading dock. It was a pallet covered in camouflage tarp. I received my tickets in person upon arrival at JFK. I'm pretty sure I helped traffic substances or weapons across borders. I can't remember the name of the company. Also, I don't think it exists anymore because it was sketchy as F. So, how much did you pay the smuggler? Nothing. He actually paid me $200. This bamboo back scratcher my wife got me for $3 like 15 years ago. It's right here next to me. I use it to scratch my back, gesticulate when I pontificate, fend off my cats, annoy my cats, and use as a tuning fork to make strange noises to annoy my wife. I joke that in the event of a house fire, this back scratcher is the only thing besides my wife and cats that I'd take with me. That's not a joke though, I really would go for it first. One of those square, window-sized box fans. Technically wasn't a purchase. I found it outside the dumpster of my junior year college apartment back in 2008. I'm a fan of airflow and white noise, so that fan ran 24 hours a day for nearly 11 years, outside of when I was away on vacations and for brief periods in winter. Most of that on the lowest setting, but I mean there were long stretches of literally months where it wasn't turned off. It died in 2019 when I can only assume some critical component just burnt out. I'll miss you, completely free thing that provided me a decade of light breeze and air circulation. Life skills teachers. What's the craziest misconception that you've had to clear up? I remember being in grade 5 or 6, having the first life skills class of our young and budding 10-year-old lives, having the wonders of life explained to us. We got to the point of explaining how babies were made, and one of my classmates got hung up on a point. He raised his hand and asked the teacher, "Is splooge hot?" We all blankly stared at the teacher, waiting for an answer. She replied with an awkward, broken answer, "Well, it's not boiling or anything like that," but before she could continue, the classmate restated the question. "But is it like hot, like temperature hot?" The teacher, still confused, tried her best. "Well, no, it's not like tea or coffee. Haven't you felt it before?" Now, with us being 10, I don't know what she was thinking, but some of us laughed, some were grossed out, but that classmate was almost angry. "No, I haven't. But is it hot?" She ended up explaining to us that it would only be as hot as your body is. It turns out the kid was just worried about hurting future partners with his boiling hot splooge. Boiling hot splooge, dibs on the band name. Taught human growth and development, aka life skills, to 5th and 6th grade boys. In our schools, you had to have a co-teacher with you, which happened to be my best friend as well. Mistake. The boys are encouraged to write out questions on note cards and turn them in, which makes them try to prank us and see if we'll read them out loud. Best one ever was, "What would happen if a man did the deed with a sheep?" To which my buddy replied, "Well, that would be bad." You always keep the good note cards. When I was little, the teacher passed out those note cards in life skills class so that we could anonymously ask questions and get the answers. I asked what a BJ was because I legitimately wanted to know. The teacher, I guess he was too embarrassed to answer, thought someone was trying to prank him and just laughed it off. I, to this day, still wonder what it is. But seriously, sometimes they sound like joke questions, but they aren't. Make a joke, sure, break the tension, but answer the question. I remember feeling so silly, like crap, everyone's laughing. I guess I'm really dumb for not knowing this already. The narrator considered reading out the Urban Dictionary description of said deed for the purposes of educating in this video. But let's be honest, if anything gets this video more likely to hit demonetization, it would be that. I'm gonna throw this one out there. They need to teach girls that urine doesn't come from the same hole that they do the deed in. I've dated 3 girls who were 20 plus at the time who never knew this. They actually went into the bathroom to see if I was lying to them. I'm curious how they thought the whole tampon thing worked. When I was in 4th grade, I thought men could only have 2 kids because they only had 2 testes. It made sense because every man I knew had 2 kids, except my buddy Greg had 2 siblings. Once I reached my revelation, I reasoned that Greg's mum must have cheated on his dad in order to have a 3rd kid. I would have just assumed Greg's dad had 3 testes. Taught in an inner-city classroom in Boston, these kids asked the best questions. Doesn't doing it in the butt cause cancer? I'd ask what HIV can lead to. Does it lead to blue waffle? I don't want to get that. Will Plan B work faster if you snort it? Good times. When my kids were in grammar school, a teacher came around and talked to them about their private places. For the next week or so, my daughters kept saying that they got hit in their privates. They were in 1st and 2nd grade, I think, so roughhousing was common, and I figured since it was a new phrase, they were using it as much as possible. Then one day, the youngest came in and said her sister wouldn't quit touching her in her privates. I was starting to freak out. I asked her to show me where her sister was touching. She pointed to her arm. I was flabbergasted and said, "How is that your privates?" She then informed me that the teacher who talked to them about bad touching said that a place that makes you feel uncomfortable was your privates, and that her sister was touching her arm and making her uncomfortable. After that, I got out my anatomy and physiology book from school and we had a much longer discussion about such things. My life skills teacher in high school told us stories about a female student she had a long time ago. The student got pregnant and was freaking out to our teacher not knowing what happened because she had apparently been taking birth control. My teacher was asking her the typical questions about her situation, how long she'd been taking them, among other things. Then later the girl mentions she had been taking her birth control pills up her hoo-ha. She figured that since the baby comes from there, that's where you take the pill. As a pharmacist, this is exactly why we put "take 1 tablet by mouth daily" or "take 1 teaspoonful by mouth" on the label. I had a mother pour an oral antibiotic suspension in her kid's ear for an earache once. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in a certain small sub-Saharan African country where life skills class was practically non-existent. Talking about that part of my life openly was a bit taboo, and misconceptions were everywhere. As the sole outsider in my village, I was assumed to be the local expert on everything, from computers to physics to world politics to calculus to, yes, doing the deed. There were so many myths, but one sticks in my mind because it was so bizarre, so prevalent, and I've never heard it anywhere else. Splooge is the only source of vitamin K, so girls must begin doing the deed at an early age to get proper nutrition. This was startling for a whole tangled mess of reasons. The cultural initiation rites that perpetuated the myth and coerced younger people to do the deed with men twice their age. The inverse relationship between prevalence of transmitted diseases and the degree of knowledge about preventing it, the enormous cultural pressure to marry young and have lots of babies, and the lack of knowledge about nutrition in general. Parents commonly ate balanced meals while their kids were only given a type of corn mash, believing that this was the only thing necessary to help them go strong. Basically, my students were already stunted from malnutrition, facing a lot of pressure to have to do the deed, and laboring under mountains of misinformation about the deed. But then there was this additional myth telling them that they needed to start having the deed without protection as soon as possible so their bodies would develop normally. I held talks at my school to combat this, taught them how to put protection on correctly, and gave some additional talks about nutrition for good measure. Oh man, the discussions we had. I'm no life skills teacher, but I went to a very sheltered private school that did not teach basic life skills. It only went as far as covering puberty, so parents had to fill in the rest. And then my mum effed it up pretty badly. She started by describing the male anatomy, wang first, then ballsack. But she never said the word for that organ again, only it. It gets so hard it can go inside a woman. And the whole time, having never seen what an adult member looks like, I assume she means the ball bag goes into the hoo-ha as well. And since I'd only seen a baby eggplant from daycare where the ball bag was actually bigger than the eggplant, it made sense. I thought this for several years until a friend cleared that misconception up. I was also unaware of thrusting. I thought you just put it in and waited a bit. I'm not a health ed teacher, but back in 8th grade I saw a girl crying in the ladies' room. I walked over and asked her what was wrong, and she told me she was bleeding down there and she legitimately thought she had internal damage and was dying. I had a friend that this happened to. She hid the bloody undies for months and was convinced that she had dropped dead at any time. Fortunately, I was in Girl Scouts and they were pretty good about letting all of us know what to expect. I'm a development support worker at a treatment home for dual-diagnosed teenage boys. As my co-workers and I basically raise these kids, we regularly field life skills questions. When I was pregnant, these were my 2 favorites.
So when the baby's big enough, you'll just poop it out, right? Is it a puppy?
English teacher here. Okay, not life skills, but you'd be surprised about the blurted statements during the Romeo and Juliet unit. So I had one girl who honestly believed she couldn't get pregnant if she didn't climax. Had one boy who thought that humans basically stopped growing hair down there in the 1980s. The poor guy actually thought he was going to be ridiculed in gym class. Freshmen are sometimes horrifyingly underinformed. Believed that you could get acquired immunodeficiency syndrome by being gay, not having unprotected intercourse, but just by being homosexual. My life skills teacher only misinformed my health class further. Told us you have a 90% chance of getting an STD if you have premarital woohoo, women can't have climaxes, so it's not worth doing the deed if you're a girl. Adult magazines and websites cause men to be abusive. Ugh. She started the class by asking, "Raise your hand if you think people who have done the deed before marriage are going to hell." I went to a public school in Alabama, obviously. And literally nobody was surprised. Still, this story was posted 10 years ago. I wonder if there has been any more progress in that particular area, or if we're still more or less at square -1 in that state. The misconceptions that I, as a 25-year-old female life skills teacher, would not A. consider going to prom with you, or B. share my personal bedroom history with you. I've also had to disprove the following notions. that men can't get transmissible diseases, that blue waffle is a real common transmissible disease, that you can't get pregnant if you wash yourself down there after doing the deed, that you can't get pregnant if you drink a lot of Mountain Dew, that if you take all of the birth controls, pills, Depot, Implanon, etc., at once, not that any doctor would give them all to you, you're uber protected from pregnancy. Oh, and a really common one, that 2 rubbers are better than 1. And on and on and on. Mostly I spend a lot of time answering really basic but highly personal and potentially embarrassing questions from my anonymous question box. My friend goes around high schools to give talks and answer questions about doing the deed as a teacher to 16-year-old girls. A girl began to cry once and told the teacher, and the whole class, that she was a hermaphrodite. After calming her down and explaining it all, she agreed to answer more questions for those curious. Turns out she was just talking about her fun button and thought it was a tiny male member. Needless to say, my friend handled it so well, but the girl probably had to change schools afterwards. I know of a girl who didn't know where babies came from. This was a friend of mine's cousin who was pregnant, but her mum had always had C-sections with her kids. So when she was told about the natural method of birthing a child, she freaked out. Well, it comes out the same way it went in. You've got to be joking. How can a woman get to a stage in her life where she's pregnant and not know? Before C-sections, we just kind of popped out. They even made a dramatic documentary called Alien. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Well, kinda related. When I was little, I thought that maxi pads were meant so that a woman could pee themselves whenever they wanted. My dad and I were watching a commercial and I went on a tangent about how gross that was. He looked at me funny and said it was time we had a little talk. I was in a public bathroom in a large restaurant with my mother when I was approximately 10. As I was washing my hands, I noticed that there was a large metal dispenser on the wall for tampons $1 and napkins $1. As my mom was exiting her stall to come wash her hands too, I exclaimed, "Why would anyone pay $1 for a napkin when there's free napkins at their table?" I heard a lady in her stall snicker and my mum was a bit embarrassed. I knew what tampons and pads were, but I didn't know that napkin was a polite term for a pad. Maybe not exactly a misconception, but a girl asked me, "Is it true that when the man arrives, he pees in you as well?" It took all of my effort to not say something like, "Only if you ask him to." Probably wouldn't have gone over very well. I teach life skills to individuals with intellectual disabilities, so I get to clear up loads of crazy misconceptions. During my most recent one, I had to explain to a guy of relatively normal intelligence that girls do not have male anatomy down there. I watched his entire mind just explode to that new information. I'm pretty sure I changed his life. I know a girl in her 20s that honestly believed that males have an extra bone in their wang. She tried to defend herself by claiming that if it didn't, then why would it be called that when the guy was excited? I mean, dogs literally have a bone in their member. Many animals do. Also many primates, but for some reason it got lost during human evolution. By far the biggest and worst misunderstanding in life skills is the thought that not teaching kids about doing the deed makes it less likely that they'll get pregnant. During the talk at our school, one guy asked if one testy produced girl babies and the other produced boy babies. Looking back, it wasn't such a dumb question from the mind of a 10-year-old, but oh, how we laughed. Nice little factoid, the Greeks believed this, and some tried to strangle the one that produced girls. I'm a registered nurse. I was conducting a pre-op interview on a teenager who was going to have surgery. She was there with her mother, probably in her late 30s or early 40s, and I was asking basic health-related questions. Past medical history, surgical history, allergies, etc. At the end of the interview, the teen, looking kind of embarrassed, asked me, "How many holes do we have down there?" I answered, "Women have 3. Just then, the teen looks at her mum and explains, "See, Mum, I told you." And the mum looks confused and asks, "Are you sure it's 3? I tell her, yes, women have 3, vajayjay, urethra, butthole, and men have 2. The mother goes, "Men have 2? I was shocked. Long story short, I had to draw them a picture of female and male anatomy to drive the point home. They thought that women urinate from their hoo-has. I can see how the teen could be confused, but the mum was too. In college, I dated a 21-year-old Muslim girl who believed that sperm could rapidly swim up off the bedsheets, over her leg and down her hoo-ha, and through her cervix on their own like hungry, sentient parasites. Can you imagine if that crap was real and you had to swat and slap the splooge monsters to death off their faces and chests before the little B-words reached their targets? Also, you would be guaranteed to get pregnant from every hotel bed you ever laid in. And that statement is just making me think about that gross element of hotels, and no thank you. One of the standards that we have to teach in our state, Kentucky, is that men produce sperm for the entirety of their lives, whereas women have a finite number of eggs. Generally, this gets into PMS, menopause, and a few similar subjects. For contextual purposes, I'll try to outline the classroom. This is a 7th grade classroom, 13-year-olds. 50% are below the poverty line, 50% Caucasian, and 20% Hispanic. The rest are various other races. 100% male, as I was working with the males and another teacher was working with the females. So this particular child is a plump little boy. Really contemplative, too. You can see him looking down to the ground, pondering and really working out something in his head every time he responds. So after I explain how older men can have babies but older women cannot, he just asks, "So you're telling me an old wrinkly man can have a baby?" To which I affirm, yes. So the kid is just staring down, thinking for a while. After about a minute, he looks back up and says, "So if an old wrinkly man has a baby, does that mean the baby has wrinkles?" I honestly just about lost it. Then we had a conversation about how people being shot do not produce bullet-resistant babies. Also, every class for some reason responded with my question of, "What's the one way to not have a baby?" in the same gosh darn way. "You wear 3 rubbers." Like, what the heck? We were taught life skills by our religious teachers, and in this case, our middle-aged, Jesus-loving teacher. It was always going to be an awkward affair in a mixed-gender school, boisterous lads showing off to the girls giggling, etc. The lesson was moving along as planned, but it was getting a tad boring. Questions were being fired, but nothing we didn't already know. Then the teacher had a brainwave, giving everyone a small piece of paper and asking us to write an anonymous question if we wanted to know something but were too afraid to ask. Within seconds, half the class is scribbling away. The papers go into a box and are picked out one by one. "What is this strange buzzing wand my mum has?" Quite a tame one, and the teacher was able to reel off a vicar-friendly answer, but it got progressively uglier. What's a BJ? What's prostate massaging? What's felching? It's worth noting that this was around 1994, so the internet was not an option. The teacher was backed into a corner, armed only with a book and a very basic knowledge of the deed as a reproductive tool. Lots of stuttering ensued. Watching a middle-aged woman explain to the class the finer points of manual stimulation still makes me raise a smile. I'm a teacher, but not normally a life skills teacher. My state is abstinence-only education, and so most of the life skills is limited at best. This may explain a 9th grade class I had 3 years ago with 4 mothers in it. Anyway, one of my students was convinced that if you jumped up and down after you had done the deed, you wouldn't get pregnant. Without using any words that would make me blush, I told her unequivocally that she was wrong and to not try that at home. Then another student raised her hand and essentially asked about the pull-out method. She didn't know the terminology. I told her again that was not a really reliable method, especially with teenage boys. Then a third student asked about doing the deed when you're not ovulating. She actually asked, "What about having fun during some parts of the month and not others?" I explained that teenage girls may or may not have a real reliable cycle, and being even a day off the rhythm method could result in pregnancy. Finally, after towing the company line, the only foolproof method is abstinence, and in the absence of abstinence, take care of yourself, a girl in my class sighs and says, "Well, I will just keep doing sit-ups after doing the deed." I kid you not. And some of these girls were AP college preparatory students. The best one I heard was from the nurse at our school who was explaining all of the diseases you can get from the hoo-ha, BJs, and doing it in the butt. A girl in the class raised her hand and said, "So that's where crack babies come from, right?" And the nurse asked her, "What?" And the girl said, "Crack babies, you know, from doing it in the butt." You've got to love abstinence-only education in an overly religious state, teaching girls to hate their bodies and be ignorant at the same time. The most disconcerting thing I'd heard while teaching life skills was the notion that transmissible diseases are like a game of tag. I was asked numerous times that if one had acquired immunodeficiency syndrome and gave it to another person, does that mean they're cured? "Tag, you got herpes. Anyone care to take this HIV off me?" So I'm not a teacher for this subject, but my little sister was 13 and my brother had just gotten married. I mentioned to my sister that I thought it was weird that my brother is going to the same cabin as my father had for his honeymoon with my stepmom. My little sister said it wasn't weird because doing the deed is only for having babies, and since my brother didn't want kids for 5 years, they wouldn't be doing the deed, and that my dad was too old to have kids, so they also never did the deed. Explaining to her that there are more reasons for doing the deed was awkward. Also, my sister-in-law, until she was 16, thought that doing the deed meant you laid side by side and the sperm crawled out of the guy's belly button and into the girl's belly button. We were all homeschooled and Christian. In case anyone's wondering, my mum never gave us any kind of growing up talk. No birds and bees, no puberty, nothing. She did put a copy of The Care and Keeping of You under my door with a note saying I should read it. It is an American Girl Company book on your changing body. Bras appeared in my drawers, but nothing was ever said. There was a steady supply of sanitary products, but I never even told her I got my period, I just figured it out. So yeah, unless you looked it up yourself, you knew nothing. I used to go to a really religious school. The girls there believed that no one actually enjoys doing the deed, it's just the media telling you you do. My friend once had a Chinese exchange for uni, and she had to look after him. In the first month, it was discovered that he knew nothing about doing the deed or how babies were made. 19 years old, by the way. My friend taught him all of this during his exchange. Anyone who doesn't know, China's culture is that adult fun and relationships come after education and the establishment of your career. The schools don't teach it, and there are stories of kids going out and parents moving them over provinces to stop them dating so they can focus on schoolwork. Don't any of these hyper-religious folks grow up on farms? I ask because, it's hard to be so misinformed about doing the deed when you're breeding animals. My girlfriend is a pharmacist and has told me some good ones. She had a girl complain about her birth control falling out, and found out that she had been sticking the pills up her hoo-ha. Also, she had several that ran out of pills early and needed to be told that only she takes them, not her and her boyfriend. And of course, she's had a few girls get pregnant and find out that you're supposed to take the pills every day, not just when you do the deed. Medical professionals. What's the craziest DIY treatment you've seen a patient attempt? I had a guy come in for coughing and shortness of breath for the past few months. His lungs sounded like absolute crap. Got a chest x-ray that looked horrible, so I did a CT scan. Radiologist called it the worst case of necrotizing pneumonia he'd ever seen. The guy had like a 15% functional lung tissue left. The patient then mentioned things had been worse after he started using a new breath freshener spray. He whipped out one of those blunt effects concentrated air freshener bottles supposed to cover up green herb smell. Labeled not for internal use. Apparently he'd been using it like Banaka spray and had already gone through 3 bottles. Paramedic here once had to explain to a family that putting lemon juice in the eyes of an unconscious patient isn't an approved treatment method. And no, it didn't work. It was an interesting moment when I had to explain why his eyes hurt, though. Smelling salts, same logic applied for seeing acids. Anesthesiologist here, we had a patient come in for I&D of bilateral deltoid abscesses. He apparently had thoughts of being a bodybuilder, but instead of lifting weights or knowing someone who could hook him up with some quality roids, he decided to bulk up using some protein powder at GNC, and mixing it with water, drawing it into a syringe, and injecting the 20 to 40 cc's directly into the muscle. If bulk was what he was going for, it definitely worked, temporarily. A rip-roaring localized infection makes you look pretty swole. They also got almost a liter of pus mixed with liquefied protein powder out of each deltoid. This also wasn't the first time he had been in for this problem. That last line kills me. Try it once, shame on you. Try it more than once, what the frick are you doing with your life? My dad had an abscess on his face. It was huge, about the size of a golf ball and horribly red. It kept getting bigger. My mum, a nurse, kept telling him to go to the doctor, but my dad was a ridiculous cheapskate. One day when she was gone, we noticed a big whitehead had formed on the abscess, and it was apparently ready to pop. My dad went out to the garage, got his shop vac, placed it over the whitehead, and proceeded to suck out the abscess. It worked surprisingly well and healed up after that nicely. Mum was still furious, though. It's a pity these medical stories tend to do quite well on the channel, because these are also the ones that leave the narrator dry heaving over the side of his recording setup. This was the first one of the day to do so, although the next one admittedly took me even further. If I've learned anything from reading the stories here, it's that some people, particularly men, will tolerate almost any amount of pain to avoid a doctor seeing whatever stupid crap they've done to themselves. This is no exception. I once spoke to a paramedic who went out to a man at 2 a.m. who had excruciating pain down below. The poor organ was wrapped tightly in soaking bandages, and underneath was a blackened member with large pus-filled holes in it. The man eventually admitted that he'd shoved a chicken bone, a clean one, whatever that means, down his pee-pee hole for pleasure. Predictably enough, he couldn't get it out, and being too embarrassed to go to the doctor, he had left it until he was in so much pain he couldn't walk, both from the rotted eggplant and the fact that he hadn't been able to urinate for days. Apparently, you couldn't actually see the bone once the wound was clean, and although not an expert, my friend couldn't imagine that what was left was salvageable. In nursing school, while I was on clinical rotation in urology, there was a man who ended up having his member removed. It turned out he had an infection brewing for quite a while and thought the best course of action was placing a sock over it in the hope that it would heal. He was generally confused and upset as to why this didn't work to heal the issue. One of my first clinic patients was a guy who was injecting a mixture of testosterone, human growth hormone, sesame oil, and sunflower oil into the base of his member as a DIY enlargement therapy. Well, it got infected, so he ended up going to the ED for incision and drainage. I saw him as a post-ED visit, and at the time, he figured that he shouldn't be injecting things into his eggplant while it was healing, so instead he was injecting his oil and sketchy hormones off the internet concoction everywhere else into his body. Arms, legs, butt, shoulders, etc., because he figured it would still have some effect.
Judging by the rest of these stories, some men are capable of committing atrocious, heinous acts of terror on their own members.
There's a myth that lowering someone's core temperature will save them from an opiate overdose. As a result, many first responders have arrived on scenes to find friends or fellow users inserting ice into someone's butt. Sometimes they don't have ice though, which leads to people getting pretty inventive. Popsicles, frozen hot dogs, my personal favorite, which regrettably I didn't witness myself, it was told to me by another medic, was a bag of frozen French fries. Cold will do nothing to help someone who is overdosing on smack or other opiates. What they need is respiratory support, oxygen or artificial ventilation, and naloxone, Narcan. If you're a user or know one and somebody ODs, call 911, perform mouth-to-mouth, and give Narcan if you have it, but leave the popsicles in the freezer. I work in dental and years ago had a patient attempt to superglue her front teeth back on after they broke in half. She screwed up and ended up gluing the chunk to her upper lip. I had a dental patient with a dead front tooth that had turned black, so she painted it with white nail polish daily. This happened when I was still a med student doing a rotation in the ED. The patient comes in and is pretty vague about his actual complaint, something about head pain, but he looks just fine sitting, waiting to be seen. When I finally get to see him and ask what actually happened, he removes the hat he was wearing and a chunk of skin about the size of my hand literally flaps off his skull. This man managed to basically scalp himself, and apparently it had been like that for 3 days. According to him, it was caused by falling in his bathroom and hitting his head on the toilet. He had been previously duct taping it down or using the hat to hold the skin on, but it wasn't sticking well, and that's when his wife convinced him to come to the hospital. Pharmacist here, worked in a shop where a woman asked for some advice about a potential UTI or STI. Told me she had bathed her hoo-ha in bleach for 5 minutes to try and kill any bacteria. Miraculously, she hadn't done any lasting damage. An old lady told me the rain hurt her arthritis. That's reasonable. She also swore that dog spit had healing properties, so she let her dogs lick her feet when she felt it coming on. She then wanted to show me a video of said dogs licking said feet. I swiftly and politely declined. Adult patient had gas and poked a hole in his belly button with basically a knitting needle to release it. It didn't work. He actually came in for the ensuing infection in his belly button. Oh God. I don't know what age I was before I came to the conclusion that poking holes in my body's organs was a bad idea, but it was at least a decade earlier in my life than this gentleman. The young narrator was a moron, so what does it make this man? I work in oncology pharmacy. I had a patient die of totally treatable chest cancer because they decided to treat it with mistletoe instead of chemo, all because Suzanne Summers did. Yeah, the Thighmaster lady. Don't take medical advice from the Thighmaster lady. The most heartbreaking thing I've seen is a desperate husband bring his wife in at death's door. They were young with 2 kids under 10. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer and didn't like what her oncologist was telling her. To be fair, that crap is terrifying. She then left the UK, so all of the chemo and surgery that was free at the point of access, and followed the alternative practices recommended by some witch doctor in her own country. By the time her husband dragged her back, she was too far gone. Had spread to too many organs, trouble with breathing, groggy, seizures from brain mets. I work in ED. I don't know how oncologists and palliative care teams do what they do. Of all the horrible traumas I've dealt with, this is one of the most upsetting cases I've ever picked up. A little late to this thread, but I have a weird one. A patient was told by her doc that she had low magnesium and should consider supplements. Not uncommon. Instead of getting MG supplements, she ate an entire tub of homeopathic volcanic ash and completely destroyed her electrolyte imbalance and ended up in ICU. We admitted her as a pharmaceutical overdose, so poison control automatically follows up with you. It was hard to explain to them. It was probably naturopathic, not homeopathic. I don't know enough about specific differences. Think of a tub of protein powder, but volcanic ash. Her husband brought it in for the poison control report. You were supposed to mix in a scoop with water for the health benefits. She ate the whole tub and had a seizure and wrecked her kidneys. The activated charcoal and volcanic ash vomit that was all over her when she came from emergency was a B word to clean up. A mentally delayed woman came in septic to the ED. We did x-rays, blood cultures, urine cultures, the works. Finally found this weird image on her pelvis film, and we had the gyn come in to do a pelvic exam. They pulled out this blob with bones in it. Y'all, I swear to God, it was a decomposing frog. She put it in her hoo-ha for safekeeping. She got toxic shock syndrome from a frog. Ribbited for her pleasure. My boss is a nurse practitioner. I asked her what the worst thing she had witnessed was. She continued on to tell the story of a man who had stapled his ball bag together onto his body after slipping with the razor. He had had it that way for days, metal holding his poor testes in place, infected and gross as you'd expect, before he came in to a professional. Later admitted his ex had attempted to castrate him. The organs lived, never fear. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A guy came into the ED because his leg was swollen. I'm talking like twice the size of his other leg. It turned out that his 4th and 5th toes were getting caught on his sock, which to be fair sounds kind of annoying. So he cut them the frick off with scissors. And then, surprise, it got infected. And he waited, and that's how he lost his entire fricking leg. Had a young teenager with sickle cell disease who had been in the hospital for around a week, already who decided to manage his pain himself. This was a few years ago, but I caught him pretending to take his meds. He would cock his head back and gesture that the pill went into his mouth, but really he either kept it in his hand or he threw the pill behind his back and landed somewhere in his bed. He was also quite a talker, which I then assumed was a tactic to try and distract me. I kept seeing his odd behavior and caught him doing this 2 to 3 times by the middle of the shift, so I was definitely onto him. He had a PICC line, which is essentially a long IV where the tubing goes all the way to your heart, in his left arm. And I noticed it was quite a bit more swollen compared to his other arm. Sometimes clots can happen in PICC lines, so that was my biggest concern at first. But the line was drawing blood fine, so I knew it wasn't clotted off. I told the doc, then I drew blood from his PICC line and sent it down to the lab to be cultured to see if there was any bacteria. Lo and behold, it came back positive for bacteria that's commonly found in tap water, and usually not a source of infection in the infected PICC lines. Fast forward a few hours later, he confessed that with any oral medication, pill form, he can slip by the nurses, he saved for later in order to crush it up himself to try to dissolve it with sink water in the bathroom. Every room had a private bathroom, so he could inject it in himself via his PICC line. Having once seen a commercial that oatmeal can lower cholesterol, a patient started having chest pains and tried to resolve it with a bowl of oatmeal. We had a guy come in with an abscess on his right thumb. When I asked him what happened to his hand, he told me about his recent deep-sea fishing trip and was given the responsibility of cutting the fish with an open wound in his hand. A sliver of fish got in there and became infected as it healed, so this guy gets the bright idea of doing a little DIY wound drainage by grabbing his pocket knife and cutting it open again, leading to greater infection. Yep, I also had a smack addict cut her thumb on her broken smack pipe. The thumb was incredibly infected. She grew tired of waiting for the hand surgeon to arrive. She was in the operating room with another patient, so she bit her finger to release the pus. Then she left the hospital, cursing the staff the whole time because we're useless, etc. As a child, I got really bad sunburn. The person looking after me coated my sunburn in baby oil to help it heal and sent me back out into the sun. I realized when I was older why my mum went nuts. I have a Jamie Oliver recipe that directs me to do the same thing midway through roasting a chicken. My mater would have literally murdered if someone did that to one of her kids. Crackling, crispy skin in 30 minutes. My mom once melted Vicks Vapor Rub into my tea because she thought that would help my cold. It didn't help my cold. I know people who would do this, more than one of them. They swear by Vicks Vapor Rub and kinda treat it like a cure-all. My neighbor came over to borrow a chainsaw. I noticed he had a thick bandage around his arm and asked him what happened. He said he fell out of a tree last week and cut his arm. I asked if he got stitches and he said he just wrapped it up and his family was praying over it. About 4 days later, I saw his wife, and she said he was really sick and may have the flu. Came to find out he had septicemia and was dying. He died a week later of kidney failure and sepsis. Putting an adult fun toy up the butt to better reach another, larger toy. Patient used to get hard-ons in class and it embarrassed him so much that he used rubber bands to prevent it. Ended up killing the tissue in his eggplant and now he needs a catheter for life. A man who'd accidentally sliced his leg open at his workplace. He obviously figured that as surgeons use staples to close wounds, he'd cut out the trip to the hospital and DIY it, with an ordinary desk stapler. Arrived in ED with a pus-filled wound with the odd discolored staple hanging off it some days later. I am not a medical professional, but my father-in-law had severe skin cancer. He basically had an open sore on his back for several years that bled and bled. We never knew about it until one day we saw a pancake-sized crater through his shirt. Went to the hospital finally, and they basically said he had cancer through his entire body at this point. His response was that he thought it was a cut that wouldn't heal and put gauze and neosporin on it. Since folks are curious, yes, he is still alive, but they didn't give him much time left. They managed to treat the wound, but the cancer spread into his organs and bones. The sad part is it could have been avoided if he just went to a doctor years prior, but that is unfortunately the common mindset in a lot of older folks. White bread soaked in milk placed on an armpit abscess to draw out the infection. They needed an IND and a couple of weeks of IV antibiotics by the time they got to us. Either that or the guy who crashed his motorbike, scraped his leg all to heck, and then decided the best course of action was to self-cauterize it on the tailpipe. Wow, stupid or not, the tailpipe guy had a set of brass ones on him. When I worked in the ER, my colleague had to see a guy with an ear problem. He had something stuck in his ear and had been trying to get it out. This wasn't a new thing, he had been trying for some time. Turns out he'd completely removed his tympanic membrane, and the bits that were stuck in his ear and that he was trying to pick out with cotton buds and hair clips were his ossicles. Enjoy! Had a patient come into the ER with a makeshift bandage on his shin. He'd fallen on rocks while hiking and had left a 3-inch long, half-inch deep gash in his leg. I go to pull the bandage off, and as I'm peeling it away, I notice the skin is completely black, and there's dark chunks of fungus falling out of the wound. It looked necrotic, like it had been left alone for a week. I look at this guy like he's crazy as he tells me the wound is only a few hours old. He's pretty proud as he explains that he created a makeshift poultice by chewing up leaves and moss, mixing it with river mud, and stuffing it into his leg. That's what all the black mossy stuff was. Hint: don't do this. My grandpa thought a leg discrepancy was causing my back pain, which was causing spasms. He put several pieces of cardboard in my shoes to try and even out my legs, which were already even. He also thinks black beans cure everything. My dad thought those pesky spasms were a pinched nerve, so he'd take me to the chiropractor, his girlfriend, to get my neck cracked whenever it happened. Seizures, people. They were seizures. My stepfather thought he had a boil of some sort on his arm a few years ago. So he did what any middle-aged dad would do, cut the sucker open and poured hydrogen peroxide on it. Turns out it wasn't a boil but a form of skin cancer. Also turns out that hydrogen peroxide doesn't do much to help with melanoma. After a lot of one-sided discourse, he went to the doctor to get it checked and treated. He's now cancer-free. Good God, how is this man one of the most sensible people in this entire grouping? I'll take this as an absolute win over the many, many men in the earlier stories who no longer have usable reproductive organs. When I was an internal medicine resident, I came across a very nice 50-year-old Dominican lady. She was very well-mannered, but one could tell she was not the sharpest tool in the shed. As I was prepping her chart for our first visit, I noticed she'd been seen by every single digestive disease MD in our hospital system. Not only that, she had had every single procedure in the book, ranging from endoscopies up both holes and culminating in an exploratory laparotomy. You're opened up to basically look inside you when we have no clue what's going on. All of this because for years she'd had one single complaint. She reported severe gnawing pain in her stomach. At this point I should mention she was Spanish-speaking only. Not only that, she had a very heavy Dominican accent, and I was the first Hispanic doctor to ever see her. My first language is Spanish, and even I had difficulty understanding her. So she comes in, and after exchanging some first-time pleasantries, I politely ask her how she's doing. Sure enough, although she was smiling and said she felt well, she pointed at her belly and said, "It was biting again," and asked for cream to kill it. At this point, I got intrigued. Her medication list only mentioned a cream used for herpes breakthroughs. The previous fellow only mentioned in his note that in every single visit, she only asked for the cream and nothing else. When I asked her what she meant by the biting and what she intended to do with the cream, she very calmly tells me she intended to stick the cream up her butt in order to kill the bird living inside her. After delving more deeply into her story, it turns out she didn't have a medical condition. Ever since she was a little girl, she believed that after eating a whole quail egg, the bird had spawned inside her and gnawed away in her insides whenever she was hungry. After a short visit to psych, she was diagnosed with a somatic-type delusional disorder. No amount of medication or psychotherapy will cure her, but she was still a fully functional mother of two who paid her taxes and had part-time jobs. I reached out to every digestive disease doctor in our hospital system once more to make sure she never receives an inappropriate invasive intervention. I've been following her for 3 years now, and she's happy as one can be, considering she has a bird living inside of her. What's the stupidest thing you've ever witnessed one of your new hires do? After more weeks of training than should have been necessary, charts, books, and explicit instructions, he ruined a $10,000 piece of equipment because he didn't load it correctly, because it, quote, took too much time. It was an industrial centrifuge. Basically, you have to try really hard to not balance it. You have to load everything on one side to blow the motor. He blew the motor. He wasn't fired then and there. He was fired about 10 minutes later when I sent him to the boardroom to review the materials while I set up the replacement, and I found him in the CEO's office watching adult content online. I walked in on it. Unless centrifuge instruction manuals involve a giant wang defiling a screaming woman, he was not doing as instructed. Also, he wasn't browsing incognito, so when I checked the browser history later, the very clearly named website was there, clear as day. I did have to explain to my boss what it was, and that was a little awkward. I didn't actually have the power to fire him, but I was so livid the words just flowed out of my mouth. Sounds like he was either a moron or he was trying to get fired. Either way, the hiring manager needs to be looked at. I worked at a convenience store and often fell into the role of supervisor or manager. My boss was on holiday when the following happened. We had a fellow working one night when a customer brought in a $5,000 winning lotto ticket. First mistake, and completely against policy, the employee opened the safe and just paid it. Nobody should know you can open the safe, especially when we worked alone at night. That should have been referred to the Lotto Corp to pay directly, or the owner could write a check. Second and worst mistake, there's little bits of paper you have to submit to the lotto folks when you pay a ticket, so your store gets the money paid back, minus a fee. He threw the paper in the garbage, which then ended up in the huge dumpster that served both us and several apartment buildings. So if I don't find this piece of paper, my boss loses the $5,000, and one or more of the employees might lose their jobs. I put bags over my shoes, grabbed a pair of dish gloves and a painter's mask, climbed a ladder and hopped in the dumpster. I started ripping bags and trying to determine what day and where it came from. Just shy of 2 hours later, I emerged with that piece of paper, followed quickly by the longest shower of my life. The idiot responsible for my dumpster dive didn't even say thank you. He wasn't allowed to work alone for some time thereafter, and he got epically chewed out when the boss came back. Honestly, that seems like the kind of thing the narrator would have done in his first few jobs, but I don't know if the guy in question could put it down to the same idiot adolescent reason that I could have back then. I once had to train some new girls who seemed to be friends at a concession stand. In the space of about an hour, they demanded they be allowed to modify their uniforms, asked if they could use our cash registers to check social media sites, were told that customers order food, you prepare that order, and they decided that's too much work and it'd be easier to make a bunch of random orders and serve them if they happen to get ordered. But, new girls, if no one orders those things, that food goes to waste. If that happens, can we take it home with us? No. They disappeared into a storage room to check their phones and gossip. They hadn't been on duty for 20 minutes at this point. They had a popcorn fight. They just started screaming and throwing popcorn at each other while behind the counter. They were called into the manager's office and were immediately fired. They threw popcorn at the manager and then stormed out screaming about how they'd better get paid for all their work. I'm not sure they even completed 5 minutes of real work. Hey girls, let's go F with a business today. My dad found out his secretary had racked up over $45,000 in legal bills from emailing simple questions to a lawyer she was told not to talk to unless she asked my dad. He was very calm and wrote a nice email to her, and she didn't get the memo. Her response was along the lines of, "Wow, you pay your lawyer that much? I think I deserve a raise." I choose to believe it went like this. The secretary mails the lawyer, "So, what's your favorite color?" Send. Lawyer. Listen, I hope you understand by emailing me I'm charging you for my time. Also, my favorite color is green. $2,500. Oops, sorry. Do you have a PlayStation 4? Yes. $2,200. How is it? Holy crap, lady. Do you realize what you're doing? $3,000. I worked as a manager at a frozen foods production plant. I supervised the line crew. Well, one day I decided we'd start an hour early, 4 a.m., so we could finish early. Everyone comes in on time. Then I noticed one of the ladies laughing and drooling all over the pizza crusts. I just kind of ignore her at first, and then she started stumbling around. I began paying more attention to her and noticed that her eyes were completely bloodshot and her face was bright red. When I had seen her at first, I thought it was just the early hours. So I pulled her aside and talked to her, and I can taste the alcohol running off her. I send her to the break room where I can follow company policy and take her to a hospital for a blood test. I finish the things I need to do and head in there to find her. She's gone. 30 minutes later, 2 cops are at the front door. She took off, got in her car, and hit a power line 100 feet from the plant. Needless to say, she was fired and arrested within a 3-hour span. My employee took a customer's vehicle, a built 73 Corvette, out for a test drive after fixing the water pump on it. It was his first week of working for me. That car was a good buddy of mine's. My buddy worked at a local drag strip. He was not happy when he saw his own darn car with his name signed on the roof pull up to make a pass. He told the guy in tech to not let it pass, and he called me. I showed up and watched my buddy confront him about why his car was at the strip. Then I walked out of the office and told the guy he could find his own ride back home and that he no longer had a job. Was that a rough move? Maybe. Was I proud of myself? Hell yeah. Not sure what the idiot was thinking. Taking a car with a guy's name on it and a sticker for the drag strip to that drag strip. Talking to the guy whose name is on the roof. I don't think he quite understood how guys work. Within the week, every mechanic around us had heard what had happened, and I heard the guy applied for a job at another shop like a month later. I doubt he was hired. I had to manage a bunch of contractors cabling the building. We had 12 of them. They were just a bunch of guys, no experience required kind of job, who applied first. Since we needed them urgently, no real interviews had been conducted. One of them was caught stealing food from the employee fridge. He did it for a week. He would even open boxes and taste what's inside before choosing the right one. The other one left for a smoke and returned 6 hours later. His excuse was that he suddenly decided to buy an iPhone and went to the city to do so. I was the assistant manager of a pizza chain. The manager hired an employee who I can only describe as a smelly moose. A big animal in your way that smells like fertilizer. He was our new delivery driver, and unfortunately 2 days into the job we caught a nasty rainstorm. He took it upon himself to pull the most fake, theatrical fall while leaving the building that I swear you couldn't script it for Life Alert without landing $1 million deal. I saw the whole thing happen. The moose didn't see me. He fell by slowly lowering himself onto his elbow, looked around for a witness to his crap show, and crying out like he'd just shattered his whole back. He immediately started chanting, "My arm! Ow! My arm! Ow! Ow!" So all of us cooks piled around him and asked why he was okay, as he was rolling all over the front entrance and all around making a scene. He finally gets up while holding his elbow, like it's been shot by a bullet overseas, and says he's fine and needs to take the night off. Okay, we say, and his mum comes to pick him up. Not 2 days later, we get slapped with a lawsuit asking that we pay for his shoulder surgery. It's a good thing that the owner lawyered up because that SOB had hurt his shoulder years before and they wanted money to help with hospital bills. Ah, America, where people do crazy, stupid stunts to be able to afford medical care. Not quite as scummy as some of the crash victims who, for the same reason, sued their rescuers in the "When Did Doing the Right Thing Horribly Backfire" video on this channel. So, my mum, retired now, was a doctor who had her own private practice. At one time, she had 2 assistants who helped her with scheduling and basic things like blood tests and paperwork. This meant that these assistants can view patient files. Mind you, that my mum and both her assistants were Vietnamese. This'll be important later. One of the assistants was younger and basically had the job because her mother was a family friend. She had a habit of slacking off and going on random smoke breaks, but my mum overlooked it because she valued her friendship with the family friend. One day, a white female patient came in. On the chart or something, it stated that she was not married but had 4 kids. While the lady was standing there checking in for her appointment, the younger assistant said in Vietnamese to the other one, "What a hussy, 4 kids and she's not married. I bet we're going to be treating her for all sorts of transmissible diseases." That was when the patient responded in perfect Vietnamese, "I'm divorced. Also, my fiancé is Vietnamese, so I know your language very well. I want to talk to the doctor now." Holy crap. From what I heard, a crap storm ensued. My mum was so embarrassed, and after seeing the patient, she got into a shouting match with the assistant. The assistant was fired on the spot. That is, after a lot of yelling, pounding, and police were threatened to be called. Eventually, karma did catch up to the assistant, because it turned out she was stealing prescription medicine from the office. This was revealed when my mum and the other assistant did an inventory check. Police were actually called that time. I don't know what happened next since I was a kid when it happened, but I'd like to imagine sweet karmic justice was served. In conclusion, don't talk crap in another language. You never know who speaks it and it could send your butt to jail. I was the charge nurse on duty. One of the new graduates injected cough syrup with codeine in a woman's IV. She called me hysterical. When I got to the unit, the patient was short of breath. I called the rapid response team and she was transferred to ICU. When the team arrived, the nurse was too hysterical to answer their questions, and I had to pull everything I could from her chart. After the patient was taken to the ICU, I asked the nurse how this happened. She said she was too stressed out to realize what she was doing. There are a lot of problems with this response. First, if you need help, it's okay to ask. Second, we're required to double-check that we have the right patient, right medication, right route, right dose, right time. Third, when you scan the medication, it says right there that it's oral. I felt bad for her because she was obviously sorry about it, but I felt like she needed more training. The hospital decided not to give her more training and instead wrote her up and kept her on the schedule. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe.
Not a manager or anything. The person was my equal, but apparently I had to babysit. Anyway, working fast food, we have all these little procedures to minimize the amount of cash in the till in case we're robbed. $50 or $100 notes don't go in the till, ever. The person working the register had been there for just over a month, so not particularly watching. He shouted out, "What do I do with a $100 note, mate?" They're rarely used in Australia. I yell back, "Same as a 50, meaning it does not go in the till. So this person brings it up on the register as a 50, gives change for a 50, and then gets teed off at the customer who's demanding another 50 in change. Then he frickin' tries to pin the blame on me. I remember working for Domino's. Delivery drivers aren't supposed to take $100 notes from customers even when the order is a mammoth one. I got into a proper shouting match with the store owner because I took 2 $100 bills from a $180 delivery order. I'm not going to refuse legal tender and reload a $180 order into my car. The worst part is knowing if I'd refused $100 when I got back to the store,
I would have got given crap for refusing them. Fortunately, I was bulletproof in that job. We delivered to a really sketchy housing apartment area, and I was the only driver with the stones to go in there after dark. I manage a restaurant, and apparently it's hard as frick to keep a dishwasher. The most memorable one stole a pig's skull. It would have normally been thrown out after the chef took his customary photo, and she could have asked for it, weird as it would have been, but she stole it and put it in her backpack, which was bulging. Employees' bags were checked by management before they left. I found the skull, and the chef was mad. First person I ever fired. For stealing a pig's skull. My dad is the manager of a car dealership. One of the finance managers effed up the paperwork and had to redo it. The customer had signed the effed up paperwork. Instead of calling the customer back to re-sign the new paperwork, he thought it was a brilliant idea to sign it himself, as the customer. The customer was a lawyer. The finance manager was obviously fired. That sounds like it had the potential to be a very expensive screw-up. I wonder if this particular lawyer was satisfied with the firing, or if he saw his opportunity to take the dealership for a monumental amount of cash and seized it with his cold, dead, lawyerly hands. If anyone reads this and worked for me at any point, they'll know exactly who I am and who this was. I used to work as an assistant manager at a small theme park over the summers during college. So I was maybe 21 or 22 and didn't give a crap about the job as a potential career. It was a tough spot to be in to manage 160 16 to 24-year-olds. This one kid was a ride attendant and a total D-bag. Rumors were he kept texting instead of watching the rides. I never caught him though, and he talked in fake accents to hit on girls while he was at work. These girls were like 14, by the way. I kept telling him to stop and to actually focus on work, and he'd always give me some "I'm so hard" teenager's response because he clearly owned the world. Finally, on his last day, a family comes up to me, teed off. Mum, dad, and 3 kids, who were also Australian. Turns out the kid was talking to them in a fake Australian accent and kept saying derogatory things to the family because he thought they were also talking in a fake accent. I leveled with them and said I can't stand the kid because he's a butthole and to come with me. I'll get them to the front of whatever ride they all wanted to get on. Yeah, even the parents, because parents like rides too. I walk up to the platform where the kid is texting again and go up to him. "Do you not understand company policy?" He was smirking and said, "What, you're gonna fire me on my last day?" I grabbed his badge, threw it about 140 feet into the woods. "Yeah, I am. Get the frick out." A few people waiting to get on the ride started clapping. Best day of my summer that year. I had to manage a Target cafe one year because our manager had a stroke. Anyway, one tool would not wash anything. I'd go to Pan Pizzas and find the pans on the shelf were slimy with grease, gelatinous bread and cheese mixtures, and smelled like death every time I worked with him. I'd tell him to do his crap, get upper management in, but they didn't give a crap, so he'd go back to watching his anime on his PSP instead of working. He was the laziest fricking piece of crap I've ever had the misfortune to meet, and they wouldn't fire him. Oh my god, seriously. He caused us to have bad health scores. It still makes my skin crawl. I caught him throwing pans in the trash instead of washing them before our manager finally came back. Bless that man. He barred that moron from our area and crawled up the management's pee-pee holes for not supporting me. It's been 4 years and I still hate that colossal moron with every fiber of my being. I used to manage a gas station and convenience store. I started my day at 5 a.m. and I had a second shift person call out, so I was stuck there till 10 p.m. Or so I thought. About 30 minutes before my third-party person was supposed to start, he also called out. I was stuck there for a total of 23 hours without a single break before a manager from another store came in to relieve me. Before I left, I called my regional manager and told him and his company to go and F themselves, and I quit.
Okay, this is simple, but it has to be done this exact way, so here's the instruction page. Follow these 4 steps exactly. Now, let's practice a few times. Practiced a few times? Okay, great. Show me how to do it. They demonstrate the steps. Do you have any questions about how to do this?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay, if you get lost, just grab this page and follow these steps.
Yeah, no problem.
2 weeks later, discover a huge problem. Why was it done this way?
Well, I didn't really know how to do it.
Grabs page. You follow these steps, and anyways, you demonstrated it and told me you were good to do it. Why didn't you bother to pull out this page or ask for more help?
Well, I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing.
But you clearly didn't know.
I swear to God, I almost slapped her. Follow the 4 fricking steps in front of you. I was night manager at a gas station at 19, and my boss hired a D-bag for me to train. I swear he cared more about his appearance in his blue jumpsuit than doing any real work. On the phone with his crew most of the shift, cars lined up at full serve while he was inside checking his hair. One night I came in to close the store only to find it closed an hour before we actually close. He had had a party at the station and was dancing on the roof of his car, holding a wine cooler in his hand while talking on his phone. Like 20 of his friends were all there with him, dancing to loud crap music and smoking green herb, while customers were honking for service. I fired him on the spot and kicked everyone out and opened the store back up to finish the shift, offering free coffee to customers who were inconvenienced. My boss sees me at work the next day and says I had no right to fire the D-bag, lets him keep his job with only a written warning and writes me up for giving away free coffee and wanted to dock it from my pay. I quit at the end of my shift and I was told I could use them as a reference if I wanted, as I was a good worker. First reference call he got from my new job, he told them, "John has a problem following authority and makes his own rules." Ooh, I have a semi-relevant story. Used to work in a body shop. Waterborne paint was the hip new thing. We brought a new spray booth for around $50,000, including installation and shipping and stuff. The manager of the install team was a total fricking idiot. Supposedly, he had been working this job for a while and was trusted with running the operation. In the week that he was there, everything he did wrong. I could go into great detail about his shenanigans, but for the sake of keeping things short, the tipping point was when he dropped a $20,000 computer-controlled air conditioner and airflow module from 10 feet up, damn near on top of one of his own guys. Then he tried to tell us that it was still okay, even though we could clearly see damage. My boss had a lengthy discussion with the boss of the guy, and I have a feeling he's no longer employed. A new crew was brought in and finished the job with no issues at all. To be fair, if I dropped a piece of equipment that was worth that much, my first instinct might also have been to deny. But yeah, I would never hire a clumsy idiot like me for that kind of job in the first place.
I run a recruitment and headhunting agency in Sydney. One of my business developers sits there in the meeting with one of the largest marketing automation companies in the world and starts spilling secrets of a few of their competitors who we also frickin' work for. I have preferred supplier agreements with both, and this idiot thought it was okay to share this specific piece of information with the competition. I asked him to please leave the meeting. The director I was speaking to could tell I was livid and agreed not to act on the information. I had to call the other client and explain what had happened. He nearly ripped my head off, but explained this would change the relationship as he could tell I was being honest about everything. PSA clients are now exclusively mine and my business partners. When I used to work in a truck stop, I came as close as I ever did to firing someone on the spot. If you've ever been around truckers or a truck stop, you'll notice that it can be a pretty diverse lot. It's good money for those willing to do it, which includes a ton of immigrants. In my time, I'd dealt with tons of people from Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. By and large, they were great people and caused us the least amount of trouble. I always used to joke around with one of our regulars who was from India that he was torturing us when he'd warm up the food his wife would pack for him in our microwave. Some of the stuff he had was amazing and would make you hungry just from the smell. We'd hired a new cashier, and from the beginning I had the feeling she wouldn't last, but I'd give her a chance. A week or so later, while working on some crazy thing for an upcoming visit from higher-ups, she made a snide remark over our radios that we wore, but the word I stopped listening at was raghead. You see, we all wore radios with earpieces to make communicating back and forth easier. The other truck stops at our exit used the same system and occasionally you could hear them. Also, every district manager in our company and all senior management had them, as did our secret shoppers. So this was a huge deal. I pulled her into the office and told her in no uncertain terms was she to use that term or any other term like it over the radio or in person again, or she'd be out the door with no questions asked. This was her only warning she'd get on that. She ended up pulling a no-show next week on the store manager, and with what I'd told him about the radio incident, when she did call in the next day, he told her to find new employment. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? High school girlfriend and I used to make out on her bed with the door locked while her parents were out there, under the impression that we were studying. Heavy kissing, and at some point she says, "Cut that out, your breath stinks." I started kissing her neck and she slowly wrapped her legs around my thigh. A couple of minutes later starts breathing heavily.
Couple of minutes after that, her legs tighten around my thigh, and a couple of minutes after that, she suddenly goes rigid, eyes roll up until I see whites, rapid breathing, exhaling heavily. I panic, and this is my moronic thought process since all the blood's left my brain. She's choking. I should give her CPR, but she said no kissing her mouth. So I close my lips around her nose and blow like a trumpet. She starts coughing immediately, but she's too polite to cuss me out, says she needs a drink of water and leaves the room. We continued to go out for about 6 years after that. In conclusion, didn't realize girlfriend was having a great time, thought she was dying, tried to save her by blowing sewer breath straight into her nose. I'm an idiot. I lost my virginity to my first girlfriend. I was about 16 at the time and was invited to stay the night because her dad was on a business trip. I was excited because we'd talked a bunch about doing it, and I was finally ready to lose my virginity. I get to her house and we're straight to action. She pulls down my pants, and my eggplant is as limp as a top ramen noodle. She did mouth stuff for about 30 minutes until I could at least get half a chub. I got on top and started ramming away. I didn't really know what to do with my hands, and at the time I know that people pull hair while doing the deed. So I crap you not, I stared down at her and take my 2 hands full of her hair on both sides and just pull in a downward thrust while I'm ramming away. Sometimes I think of this moment and want to disappear. I almost completely erased this memory. So I was young and I had my first boyfriend. We were experimenting in the bedroom, and I really wanted him to think my hoo-ha tasted nice, so I would literally rub strawberry fricking flavored lip gloss into my vajayjay. There's no way he didn't know. I thought it was such a genius idea that I had to share it with my fellow women. So I wrote it down and passed a note in class to one of my friends. It dropped on the floor and all the boys read it and started screaming laughing. Strawberry Lips was my new name and I cried for a week. This was with a girl I dated in high school. My dad was getting drunk at a block party, so I got the idea to take his ski boat and go for a romantic boat ride. So we park in the middle of the lake and start making out and stuff. We notice our feet getting wet. The boat was sinking, so I start freaking out, bailing water out with cups, sopping it up with my t-shirt and wringing it out of the boat, just freaking panicking. Right before I accept the fate of my dad's $12,000 inboard motor ski boat and calm down, I remember that I didn't put back the drain plug before dropping it in the water, so I replaced it and drove back. I think aiming for getting laid and nearly sinking your dad's boat is a pretty unsurpassed level of financial disaster on a first date, although I'm sure we'll see many cases of emotional and reputational destruction as we proceed through the topic. Started dating 3 months before sophomore year ended. Once summer started, I completely ghosted her. Skipped to the first week of junior year, and I thought we were still together. You can imagine how she reacted when I approached her for a kiss. The shame is still real to this day. Told my first real girlfriend that I'm glad she wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world, so I didn't have to worry about every guy trying to steal her. The letters I've written. Oh, those letters. 15-year-old me thought he was deep and romantic. He wasn't. I hope they don't exist anymore. She started to ignore me at school. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks after we started dating. I called her house like 6 or 7 times one afternoon after school until her mum picked up, who was basically furious because I'd been hanging on the line. I explained to her that Alexa was ignoring my calls, and I hear in the background, "Alexa, why aren't you answering the phone?" To which she replies, "Because he's weird and he just keeps calling." I hung up the phone and went to my room. I carved her name in my wall with a pen. I still cringe about it to this day. I was walking her home, anticipating kissing her for the first time at her doorstep, and I kept licking my lips because I didn't want to kiss her with a dry mouth. Halfway to her house, she looks at me and says, "Stop doing that." I realized I probably looked really creepy. Broke up with her because my best friend told me to. We were perfectly fine together, but I guess I kinda worshipped the guy and his advice. He later tried asking her out when we split. We were all 14 to 15. I'd honestly forgotten this memory until I saw the topic. My first date to a movie, we saw Titanic because that can only end well. We, as horny youngsters, aren't watching the movie, but instead making out and moaning in probably the 3rd row of a packed theater. I'd never made out before, I assumed moaning was involved. So cringy and so gross. My first kiss in the movies was at The Bounty Hunter.
It was interesting because I also got my first BJ a few minutes later in the same spot. I remember 4 things. 1. My parents and her parents were 2 rows in front of us. 2. The looks of disgust on the old couple's face 4 seats down. 3. She swallowed and it was way too much sensation for 16-year-old me. 4. Gerard Butler was in it. Declined staying the night because I was, and I quote, wearing a skirt and I didn't want it to ride up while I was sleeping. I licked her face to be random. God, that hurts to reimagine. Please don't mention hybridized eating utensils. He took me to Olive Garden and bought me that meat lover's lasagna. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called, and when we got back to his place, I wanted to show him how appreciative I was, so I gave him my first BJ. Turned out I wasn't ready for that job and I threw up the entire lasagna on his junk. God help me, I can't believe I'm finally sharing this story. That is horrible, but I'm sure there's a meat lover's joke in there somewhere. After I saw Eric propose to Donna on that 70s show, I went out and got a 25-cent ring from the local Pizza Hut and proposed. At school, in front of everyone. I was 16. I'm glad you could all share a cringe with me. To answer the burning questions, she did say yes. We didn't last, though. Sorry, no happy ending here, just teenagers doing impulsive things. I tried to defend her honor, and I got the crap kicked out of me by 3 guys. I earned cred for taking a beating, but she thought we should just be friends after witnessing that. We took a break, and I posted a video to Creep by Radiohead with the caption, "For that special someone." Oh, I almost cringed off my chair writing this. I was 17. We had just had a fight. I drove to his house and blasted "Scars" by Papa Roach from my car and just stood awkwardly at the end of the driveway waiting for him to come out. I really wish this weren't true. He did come out, but only to tell me I'm overreacting and he'll see me at school on Monday. Be right back, gonna go curl under the blankets to hide from the memories. I let him play with me down there at school with no idea the people at the next table could see. I told her I loved her within the first 24 hours at the school parking lot. My friend accidentally whimpered, "I love you," as he climaxed while losing his virginity. Talk of the school, apparently. She showed me a half-undressed pic and I was too embarrassed to look at it. After the first date of going to the movies, I never put my arm around her because I was too scared. We sat in my driveway and she didn't say goodnight because she was waiting for me to kiss her. I did nothing, so she finally kissed me. In defense mode, I licked my lips all the way around my tongue like Scooby-Doo does with the cotton candy in the theme song intro. I even did the kill me. I hit my girlfriend with my car. It was a complete accident. We're still friends and it's a story that still comes up in conversation every now and again. Look, people, the author here has his flaws. What are they? Oh, I don't know. They sing in the shower. Sometimes they spend too much time volunteering. Occasionally, he'll hit his girlfriend with his car. So sue him. No, don't sue him. That's the opposite of the point I'm trying to make. Well, she said that she thought we'd be better off just being friends, so I decided that I needed to do some big grand gesture to prove my love. It always worked in the movies, so what could go wrong? I practiced singing the song for weeks on my ukulele and figured that I would wait until after her softball practice was done and surprise her. I sang "You're Beautiful" by James Blunt. I made sure a couple of days before that I completely copied his hairstyle in the video. Except because it was 2006, I dyed it completely black and tried to do an emo version of it. It's a freaking miracle anyone talks to me after that. Obviously, it didn't work. My only saving grace was that it was a drizzly April day. I thought that just made it even more romantic, and the only people who actually saw it was her and 2 of her teammates. They looked at me like I had 3 heads when I was singing, and then the second I finished, she turned bright red and yelled, "What the frick?" And her teammates laughed for a solid 5 minutes. I was so mortified I couldn't move. Some points. I wasn't a terrible singer, but I wasn't good. It didn't help that I sometimes added intentional breaks in my voice to make the song more emotionally powerful or something dumb like that. After I was done and stood in horror as her friends laughed at me and she stormed away, I kind of did a sad George Michael-esque walk in the rain to my car as I contemplated what would be easier, moving school districts or just driving off a cliff. We weren't friends after that. It was super embarrassing for her and everyone teased her for months by singing James Blunt songs to her. I definitely had it worse, but high school kids are jerks.
It also didn't help that about 2 weeks after, we were assigned as lab partners and she raised her hand and asked the teacher if she could switch partners, and the whole class snickered. It seems sweet reading the story, but really it was super creepy and I put her in an impossible spot. If anything positive came from it, I never had any troubles approaching women at bars because I already knew what the worst possible thing that could happen was, so it was only uphill from there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My first makeout session with someone was with my first girlfriend. We were in her bedroom, turned out the lights, and went at it on the floor of her room. After a while, I feel something wet on my face. I didn't want to stop, so I just ignored it and carried on. She noticed it too and decided to turn on the light because something is really wet on our faces. The light comes on and turns out I'd had a massive nosebleed and there was blood everywhere. I was covered in it, she was covered in it, and there were bloodstains all over her room. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, when she went to the bathroom to clean up, her mum caught her in the hallway. She saw the blood and immediately screamed. Her assumption was that I was beating her daughter up and I got chucked out of the house. Took a lot of time and explaining for me to show my face there again. I also lost my virginity to the same girl to the song Kool and the Gang's Celebrate. That was cringy as heck too. I used to take laps around the playground and slap stickers on her butt. I don't know what I was thinking.
I got us matching dog tags with our anniversary on it after dating for around 6 months, and I would secretly get very sad when he wouldn't wear his.
Guilty of this too. After we broke up, he posted a video on Facebook of his friend throwing it in the air so he could shoot it. My God, I cried a little. I was 17. For the record, I grew up in Mississippi. Super American in the country. I was upset when it happened and I didn't even respond to him. Should have saved the video to make a meme, but I don't have a Facebook anymore and it was a long time ago. It was pretty funny looking back. I was super shy back in the day and I really liked this guy who had weirdly flirted with me in one of our classes. He told me I looked like some random celebrity when I wore my hair down and how hot she was, so I never wore my hair up again for the entirety of school. I replied later by slipping a note in his locker but didn't sign it. A few days after that, I threw in a t-shirt I thought he would like. He didn't know who it was from until weeks later when he finally wore it to school to see if anyone said something. My BFF at the time did and he realized it was me. Super creepy on my end. We ended up dating for a day before we broke up because we were stupid kids. Now 15 years later, we reconnected and are now married. So, totally worked as planned. A girl that I was about to start dating mentioned she really wanted to go to New Zealand at some point in her life, to a group of people, not even just to me, so I immediately priced plane tickets and lodgings to New Zealand for a honeymoon. Then, unbelievably, before we actually started dating, I told her that I'd priced our honeymoon. My defense was that if things did work out, New Zealand was so expensive I'd have to start saving then. We still dated, but only for about 2 months, and neither of us have been to New Zealand. I let my mum purchase custom matching airbrushed shirts of 2 people kissing, with my girlfriend's and my name on them. I'd report my mum to CPS if she suggested that. I met the love of my life at age 17, aka I started getting my brains effed out for the first time. She was not shy talking about her prior boyfriend who had a super huge hog that she claimed was very painful. Of course, there were other details about their relationship that she shared too, and she was complicated and we had a lot of fights which I couldn't get my head around. At some point, I decided it would be a good idea for him and me to talk and compare notes. So, I wrote him a letter proposing this. Mutual friends reported that he was utterly flabbergasted by this, but he approached me and said, "What would you like to talk about?" I think I babbled for 20 minutes after that, but I have no further recollection. Looking back, what the frick was I thinking? That is a very bold move, but honestly, I think I can say that it was the best possible reaction you could have gotten from him under the circumstances. I think most people could have reasonably expected silence or violence. Incidentally, that's my band name. I was so nervous on the way home. Being 14, his dad drove us to my house to drop me off. I leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. A quick peck, and then I threw up his mum's fajitas all over myself. We finally did the deed when at a party at my friend's house whose parents were home. The mother knocked on the door and said, "What's going on?" We didn't stop. I was too immature to talk about us one day doing the deed, so I'd giggle and say, "Duh, you know." Had my first relationship at age 17. We were each other's first for everything. Basically only ever gave him hand fun times because he wasn't very hygienic. He insisted on keeping his underwear on, so I'd have to rub him over his boxers. He'd splooge inside his boxers and then leave them on for the rest of the day. The odd time he didn't have boxers on, he'd grab a sock and splooge inside of it, and throw it in the laundry pile. His mum did all of the laundry. So disgusting every time I think about it. He French kissed me after eating a bacon double cheeseburger with onions and all sorts of other stinky stuff. I told him I had a bad experience with French kissing with a guy before him, lies, he was my first kiss obviously, and I would appreciate it if he never did it again. Bonus cringe, I rubbed vapor rub near my eyes to make myself cry when I broke up with him and told him I was overwhelmed and needed to focus on school. I was in 8th grade. Back in 8th grade, I could not wrap my head around the obvious signals he was giving me that he was not as into the relationship as I was. I was extremely clingy and would draw doodles of us and write the mushiest notes to him on the daily. I would quiz him on what he liked to talk to me about on AIM every night, fishing for compliments from him constantly, making up new pet names every week. My best friend was dating his best friend, who most likely felt the same reluctance due to intensity, and we would arrange double dates that were mostly me and her trying to find a way to corner the boys and make out, which was extremely creepy behavior looking back on it. Reading my journal from that year is horrifying. I wish I could go back and apologize for the cringe. If you're reading this, sorry about that crap, Mitchie Poo. I know I'm not alone in the shame of horrible obsessive behavior. Since so many people have asked, I've dug up my journal I mentioned from my basement storage. Kinda wish I'd actually buried it reading it again. The entry I'm posting seems to condense how awful I was into a short and terrible package.
How can someone so terrible be so popular? Hopefully the real world isn't like that. Sigh, spelled out in the book. I heart Mitch. On AIM, AOL Instant Messenger tonight, I asked if he liked the semi-French and he was extremely vague. Maybe I'm going too fast. I hope he liked. I thought I might have seen him wiping his mouth on his sleeve. How terrible would that be? At least he loves me back. I really hope I'm not a bad kisser. I love kissing. So if I was bad at it, wouldn't it be kind of hypocrisy or ironic? I don't know. What scares me is that high school is next year. Well, I think I can probably experiment with Mitch. I don't think he'd mind, smiley face. I've never made out with someone before. I wonder what it's like. Is it gross? Is it like animalistic, like grrr? Mitch is so sweet. I want to be with him all the time. Asterisk, groan in pleasure, asterisk. When we were watching the movie at Tom's house, where I got the semi-French, he put his hand on the curve of my waist and it felt so good. It took all I had to not just start making out with him right then. I think that's like a pleasure point on women. I'll have to find out where his is. No, I'm not going to start groping his crotch. Something a little more innocent, please, with a Z. Although me and all my friends have this inside joke about how I'm his leather lady. Lol, can you imagine? Whoosh. Kiss me, Mitch, now. I want to talk to him so bad, but it's kind of late. I'm going to have to find a really good place for this journal. I don't really know who I'm writing to. Hopefully not my future kids. They'll be all like, gasp, Mom was really bad. I'm not bad. I just have lust issues. Lol. To the person who's reading this, don't judge me.
I was walking her home in our neighborhood. She says her parents aren't home. I say, cool, you have the whole house to yourself. And I walked back home, wondering if I'd ever get the chance to touch her chest. To answer the big question, yes, I did, eventually. Then we did more and were pretty bad at it. Then she faked a stalker in order to drive a wedge between me and my best friend, so I stopped seeing her. Up and down experiences all round, but hey, I got to do stuff to her for a while, once I caught on. We'd been texting back and forth, so I knew going to his house I'd lose my virginity. The guy opens the door wearing a full suit for the occasion and escorts me holding my hand into his bedroom. Jesus Christ. To give some context, it wasn't his first time. We'd been dating for around 2 months. I was determined and did go through with the deed. And what happened after was way worse than the suit. The guy had apparently told the entire neighborhood he was getting laid, and 3 or 4 of his friends broke into the house through the terrace in the middle of the deed. I promise I'm not making this up. After the whole episode was over, he left to the friend's party without inviting me. So he wasn't really a gentleman after all, as the suit had suggested. A couple of days later, we broke up. At the time, I felt horrible, but now it makes for the juiciest story. First real girlfriend in high school, we used to talk over the voice calls on MSN Messenger late at night. She just wanted to hear my voice, and I very quickly ran out of things to say, so she said I should just read whatever book I had around. She spent the next 30 minutes listening to my Your New Getaway Computer and How to Use It booklet. What are the funniest things you see posted by your no-filter friends on social media? She's caught up in a pyramid scheme, talking about how great it is not to work on a Monday. Friends is a strong word, more like Facebook acquaintances. But one twin just slept with the other twin's boyfriend.
He's taking me out tonight. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Men are all the same. Such frickin' pigs. Ugh. Oh, me and him are going to look at puppies today. Frick it. Enjoy your life with that new B-word. See if I care. Movie night Saturday with boyfriend. So nice to have someone stay in with you when you don't want to go out to the bars. Frick everything. Frick guys. They all want the same thing and I'm fricking done.
I kid you not, this crap has been going on with them very publicly for maybe 2 years now. But then again, the only reason I'm still friends with her is for my sick viewing pleasure, so who's really losing here? This high school friend of mine, I'm 42 now, so is she, meets the man of her dreams on Tuesday.
Oh my god, I've met the one!
He's at her house cooking for her by Thursday.
Romantic dinner at home with my man. I love you, babe.
Complete with pictures of a really basic pasta dish. The weekend is spent taking her 10-year-old daughter from another marriage to Disneyland or beach or other cool outing.
Look at Mr. X and my little girl bonding. He's father material for sure. Haha.
By Monday, it's all gone to crap.
Once again, I guess you can never really know someone. Thanks again, men, for being such buttholes. I guess I'm just a forever alone kind of girl.
2 weeks later, it's the same thing, different guy. Lather, rinse, repeat. Every second of it plays out on her wall for the whole world to see. It's a train wreck and I can't stop watching. And I have to add this. Last Tuesday, the same girl posted a picture of the guy she was having dinner with. The caption read, "Love of my life." Today, Saturday, she posted that she's now engaged along with photos of her engagement ring. She's known him for 6 fricking days. The saga continues. I wish I had this much free entertainment from my friends when I was younger and on Facebook constantly. It wouldn't have felt like such a waste of time. I mean, it would have been, but it wouldn't have felt like it. So, this guy, screw it, we'll call him Mike because that's his name, dips out, leaves his wife, and bangs a super hot 20-something. This girl, let's call her Kay, is my ex-wife's nemesis. She had worked for me at a bar as a waitress and was always flirting with everyone. Ex-wife was convinced I was doing her for a while until she found out about Mike. While still hating her, she finally believed me. So time passes, we move, Mike and Kay are together for about 2 years. I'm divorced, my ex-wife moves back home and actually starts dating the new manager of the bar I used to manage. I'll refer to him as C. He's a really good guy and a friend. He even called and talked to me about it first, even after 2 years of divorce, because we used to go fishing together and were drinking bros in our early 20s. Him and Mike are super great buddies nowadays, as when I left, I guess they just started hanging out with each other. A lot. This has led to an absolute crap storm on Facebook recently, because both Kay and ex-wife think the other is screwing their man. I never thought Kay was the jealous type, and my ex-wife was fairly cool up to a point, when she started cheating on me and then got all paranoid that I was cheating too, apparently. Now every time Mike or C go out, a war erupts in the comments between the women. I've noticed a trend that whichever of the two posts first, she's apparently the lying working girl. Stop posting on my man's fricking profile, you fricking hussy, etc. A few of the best parts. Mike leaves town frequently, bangs other 20-somethings, comes home, gets busted, crap goes down on Facebook. She's got albums, still labeled, "Mike's a fricking scumbag," which are full of the texts that she screenshots and sends to herself. Yet, "I love my baby so much" about 5 times a day on her wall. C is a full-blown alcoholic, as in 18-pack a day kind of guy. Then he tops it off with a bottle of Sailor Jerry. He cheats on a fairly regular basis with the girl I dated before my ex-wife, if he's not on one of his 30-day cleanses for probation, every 6 months or so. I know about his cheating because my brother still lives there and goes fishing with Mike and C all the time, and she tags along too. I keep telling my brother to get a picture of them all together just so he can post it up on Facebook and tag every fricking friend he has in that town in it. But he hasn't given in to the dark side quite yet. Which is surprising because he hates all 3 of those women because they hate his wife for pretty much no reason. She's great. Maybe it's because she's actually happy. Plus, Kay is hot as frick and it's bikini season. Selfies all day long. I've got a guy I knew from high school who's obsessed with Herbalife. He even tagged his darn wedding photos with Herbalife, and on all of his photos of him on his honeymoon with his wife, he had an Herbalife t-shirt or hat on. At some point, I wouldn't have been surprised to see Herbalife advertisements all over his wedding reception photos. This is my little daughter, Herbalifia. Just kidding. In 24 hours, I will be deleting Facebook. Real friends will know how to contact me. I'm so sick of all the attention-seeking and drama-filled behavior on here. I've tried everything, but this is the only way. Inbox me for my number, but only if you're a true friend. Peace, Facebook family. It's been real. My friend posted this 3 days ago. Yep, there's a former business associate of mine who posts this every few weeks. He's an older gentleman who failed a mayoral run, constantly posts religious warnings and overall voices his opinion on everything. Then if he posts something that gets too much negative attention, he's all, well, I'm quitting Facebook. A week goes by and he's right back at it. Deleting your Facebook is the new running away from home. We all know you're doing it for attention, and we all know you'll be back. I knew a girl in college who gave up Facebook for Lent. Then, every time there was a party, she'd agonize about posting her pictures because, I gave up Facebook, but I think God would want me to share the joy that my pictures bring. Almost everyone in the dorm was a theater major, and we're a largely agnostic group, so we kept telling her, Special K, no one gives a frick. Do whatever you want. You're not that great a photographer. Shut up. She failed Lent. Oh, I don't know, my friend who only drops vague hints at the hope for sympathy. Sometimes people make me really angry. I just want to go to bed and forget this day happened. Oh my gosh, I know the feeling. What's wrong? I'm sorry, what's going on? You and me both. Let me know if you need something. Let me know if you need anything. Sorry I haven't responded. It's just personal and I'm not going to talk about it. Even more so is the little army who responds. Every fricking time. What's wrong, hon? Everything okay, sweetie? I'm here if you need to talk. You're an amazing person. Don't let anything get you down. Stop it! You're enabling this nonsense. It's always the exact same people and they never get a response. Ever. Makes me crazy. I know someone who keeps posting that her kids don't love her and are pushing her out of their lives for other people in their lives. Plot twist, it's my mother who I live with and spend the majority of my time with. When me and my roommate had a job together sitting at desks after hours with nothing to do, we'd go on my Facebook and find long conversations of people arguing and do read-throughs like a play rehearsal. Each time we'd read through as different characters like Macho Man Randy Savage or Rodney Dangerfield. This is one of the greatest and cheapest time killers I could ever suggest. My 91-year-old grandmother is calling out every family member who uses the F word in their posts and is shaming them. She's also threatening to wash their mouths out with soap like she did when they were kids. It's adorable. Yeah, I think that's genuinely hilarious. No negativity there. Although personally, up until my current age and weight advantage, I probably would have been scared enough to let it cow me into submission. My granny was a bit scary. Frick you, dude. You fricked my girlfriend, you fricking piece of crap.
Jeremy, you watch your language, young man, or I'm gonna wash your mouth out with soap when I see you.
Evidently, Peggy is desperate for more water in Farmville too. Peggy must live in Southern California. A mother of a teenager I know shared graphic images of the bruises her soon-to-be ex-husband gave her. That didn't bother me, I felt bad for her. But when she decided to add photos of her bare butt and hoo-ha with very minimal bruising on them, things got weird. She makes her daughter take down posts she thinks if there's too much cleavage showing. Incidentally, she's also complaining that people reported her photos because they don't want to face domestic abuse. I mean, I'll face it, I just don't need to see your downstairs area again, Barbara. Someone keeps reporting his photos as containing inappropriate content. The more he complains about it, the more likely I am to start joining in. By the way, it's not you, Steve, or Steven, or Phil, or Sergio, or whoever else you think you might be. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. Oh god, that reminds me. A while back, a guy on my Facebook accidentally posted a video of himself just cranking it, and it took almost a full day before he realized it. So for days, there were tons of posts from his various family members telling him how disappointed in him they were, how his grandmother had seen it, etc. Probably the greatest actual Facebook drama I've experienced. How the frick do you accidentally do that? It was all an honest mistake. I was filming myself thrashing the mule like normal. I had to use my laptop's built-in camera because my memory was full on my digital camera and phone. Too many self-stimulation videos, you see. You know how it goes. Got to monitor the form and correct weaknesses. Well, after I finished, I saved the file. How else am I going to rewatch it later? I can't do it in the mirror to watch myself like some low-born psychopath. Totally unrelated, I wanted to upload to Facebook a video of myself going down a water slide at Schlitterbahn. Unfortunately, I'd saved both files to the same folder and titled them Wet and Wild and Wet and Wild 2. You can guess the rest. Easiest mistake to make. It probably happens 1,000 times a day. There are lots of people chiming in to say, he probably made it for his girlfriend and then it happened while his phone was in his pocket. Super easy. Call me old-fashioned, but when I film myself working the hog, I don't save the evidence for later. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mother is the worst on Facebook. Don't even get me started on the group messages she sends to the whole family. Well, fine. Don't come to my party because you obviously don't care enough to cancel the plans you already have. And I'm like, Mom, I live across the country. I'm not going to take the day off work to come to your 3-hour-long Memorial Day party. My mom won't act ugly on Facebook, but she'll post something and call me later and say, Did you see what I posted? Well, why didn't you like it? You should have liked it if you saw it. There's also, I'm going to be heartbroken if you don't wish me a happy Mother's Day on Facebook. And she'll also organize family events solely for the purpose of gathering pictures for Facebook. Not kidding. She'll say, I want to get pictures to post. When I know who's getting her 5th divorce in 12 years, I can't even begin to touch the drama surrounding that one. She's 19 and pregnant. She graduated from my high school early, but all of her posts from last night were vaguely aimed at her boyfriend and then saying, I wonder what people from my school will think once they know I'm pregnant. They'd probably have a cow. Baby mama drama, and he always prefaces his posts by saying, Y'all know I don't like airing my dirty laundry on here. There's a laundromat in a town near where I live that has a billboard that says, Dirty laundry goes here, not on Facebook. I thought that was pretty clever. For a while, I was really into reading this girl's drama about how her baby daddy keeps getting arrested for assaulting people. Her posts usually fall into one of these categories. A revelatory post about the crazy things going on in her life, usually involving her baby daddy not being able to find jobs or getting fired, quitting, hating their jobs, legal issues with the baby daddy's assault charges, lack of money, just general life problems, or B, egotistical, condescending posts about how happy she is, how wonderful life is, pictures of the baby, bragging about the baby, or C, frick off haters, get out of my business kind of posts. My husband has this woman on his feed that he keeps around for entertainment value. She posts about 2 things only, it seems. Just got out of church. Sermon was beautiful today. I feel so blessed. Praise God. Sent at 11:30 a.m. Then she posts a picture of herself licking a guy's crotch. Woo! I just sucked 5 guys for some Patron. Sent at 4:30 p.m. She then posts a picture with Bible verses and something about Jesus working in her life, and then posts a suggestive picture with the end of a bottle in her mouth held at crotch level by some guy. From what I gather, this woman really loves sucking eggplant and Jesus. She desperately wants to get married, but at 38 has never had a boyfriend. She had a few suitors, but none of them matched her claim to have attended at least 2 colleges. She's a kindergarten teacher, she's religious, and she daily posts quotes from dead priests. Hey there, baby, I spent a week at Ohio State and another week at MSU. You wanna bang? No real Facebook drama, just vague booking. I'm so over it. Some people are just such buttholes. Blah blah blah, more crap about some specific person I won't name, or better yet, confront offline and in person. I'm not sure personally what it's about, but you know who you are. I love the you know who you are posts because they never involve me and I know it. But I like to post responses getting all defensive like I think it's about me, and then they get mad and tell me to F off because it's none of my business. So I can then snidely remark, I guess it isn't very clear who the people you're referring to are now, is it? In other news, I'm apparently a total butthole on Facebook. Yes, you are kind of a butt, but we forgive you because it's funny. Also, I haven't seen this kind of post since I was a teenager. I'd hope that no adults are doing it, but who am I kidding? Of course they exist. She thinks everyone should show sympathy to the Duggars, and says we should all be praying for them instead of judging. We all make mistakes, she says, but all we can do is pray and forgive. People can change. And then, one of her apparently former friends got on there and started going off about how she was judged by the lady who put the status and how she'll never forgive her for what happened after she said she'll always be there. There were over 60 comments on the status. After about the 65th comment, the status lady states she doesn't think this is a public matter and it's inappropriate to put it all over Facebook where everyone can see. Status lady is a single mum and wants everyone to know it, is constantly complaining about not having enough money, time, or resources to help her girls. Does nothing but ask for handouts. One year around Christmas, she put on Facebook that her family is coming into town, but she doesn't have a car big enough, so does anyone have a van she can borrow? Oh, and also can someone maybe come and put some Christmas lights on the house? But you have to bring the lights because I can't afford them. Does anyone have any gift cards to anywhere fun? Because I would hate for them to have to sit at home the whole time without anything to do. Or the typical, this thing in my house is broke. Does anyone know someplace that doesn't charge an arm and a leg to fix it? But instead of wanting to know someplace that's cheap, she really wants someone to offer her to fix it for her for free. Because when someone comments and says, these people are good, she says, I probably won't be able to afford it, or something of that nature. 10 out of 10 would be her friend again just for the entertainment value. My friend thinks Obama is the cause of homosexuality and naughty content online. She also thinks Hillary Clinton should be strapped to a rocket and fired at the Middle East. So it's mostly standard. She's going on some snidely elitist rant about how her art is clearly so much better than that fake basic bullcrap that everyone else posts, all while ripping on this poor girl's new tattoo that she was very excited about. Yes, a dreamcatcher could be seen as a tad basic, but damn woman, it's what she wants and it's something she puts time and effort into planning out with her tattoo artist. It's also a well-done tattoo, just kind of simplistic in design. My friend posts about how he changed his lifestyle and now he's better than everyone else because he eats healthy and lost about 30 kilos, about 66 pounds. Pictures of healthy food 6 or 7 times a day. Hashtag grind, hashtag motivation, hashtag no excuses, hashtag time is now, hashtag work. My friend is reposting every single spam post. Find the I and your crush will ask you out. Multiple exclamation marks with an I in the middle. He's trying to get the love of his life to notice him. Eventually, it worked. His crush commented, Dude, shut the frick up with these posts. None of them work, idiot. Crushed his dreams forever. I know one who's currently separated from his wife and jumped into a relationship with another woman, then broke up with her after 2 weeks, so he bought himself a second used Mercedes. My cousin and I are both Syrians, and we live outside. He posts daily, either ranting about football, he's a hardcore Italian fan, so just imagine the posts when Juventus lost, and he also goes on long rants about Syria. And he literally rants about everything in Syria, starting from the regime, to the Islamic State, to the Free Army, to every other armed group over there, to the Muslims living there, the Christians, to Allah and Jesus, to the cats in the street, to the nostalgia of the old vids and pics of Syria, and specifically Homs, since we're both from there. And he has about 1,600 followers, half of them close friends with him, and mostly they're religious. You should see their comments about being offended, and he replies to every single comment justifying his posts. And I really enjoy his posts. They're funny and so spot on, and I would have shared them with you if they weren't in Arabic, because they'd lose their humor with translation, and I'm not a good translator. One girl keeps posting screen caps of the amount she's owed in unpaid child support, and tagging the kid's father in the posts. My friends are having a really tough time accepting the Caitlyn Jenner situation and are arguing that there needs to be a third restroom. Well, I guess they aren't arguing because nobody is commenting, but still. He's very sad because people don't like his selfies enough. He posts about 7 times a day on Facebook and it's always a selfie, and if he doesn't get enough likes, he posts another mopey one. Her baby daddy has been texting other women, cue screenshots of said texts, trying to get a motel with them in Ohio. But that's fine because she's not giving their unborn child his last name and he's definitely not signing the birth certificate. And it just goes on and on. An acquaintance from high school who I haven't seen in more than 20 years constantly posts his exploits with his on and off again girlfriend. Apparently she's a crystal addict, doesn't work, and will do whatever necessary to get a fix. Every week or two they're back together, talking about how much they love each other and plan to get married. Then she needs a fix. Suddenly my feed is full of him calling her a substance-addicted working girl who blows her dealer for crystal. They fight online, he drags all his friends into the drama, proclaiming he knows who his true friends are, and he's learned his lesson. He swears he's done with her and never going back. The last time it happened was about 3 weeks ago when he caught her with her dealer, and the dealer shot him in the leg. Gratuitous pics of the wound and him at the hospital soon followed. It grazed him, nothing life-threatening. He said it was the last straw. No more of that no-good crystal hussy. He had learned his lesson. They got back together again yesterday. Someone posted about how his girlfriend of 3 years was cheating on him and displayed a picture of the guy, tagged his girlfriend, and joined in super personal discussions on this post. Not 2 hours later, he said that people need to leave him alone and that he and his girlfriend will figure it out on their own, and that these matters are personal. Like, what? This one girl who went to my middle school made a video of her and her niece dancing to a song called Bless the Bottle, celebrating that she got the results of a paternity test back and the father is a guy who is married. They were dancing and singing along with baby bottles in their hands and throwing unused diapers in the air like it was cash. Since apparently this guy's wife works at a county job like DMV or something, so they figured this baby is going to be an 18-year payday. He still regularly compares himself to Batman and Solid Snake, is bitter about his ex cheating on him after he took her back 7 times over a year ago, claims he gets laid regularly but only posts pictures of him hanging out with underage girls, talks about all the substance users in our hometown when he himself still smokes spice, and generally just seems like he's one day away from going postal. Keep rocking on, Sean. I'm rooting for you. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.